They're coming to get me. Hey, everyone. I'm here with Yarn Brook and PSA Sitch, and we're going to talk about maybe some current events and some objectivism. Yarn Brook is the chairman of the board of the Ayn Rand Institute. That's correct, right, Yarn?
Nice correction. Nice correction.
On the Ayn Rand? I'm not sure I know how to pronounce it, to be honest with you.
Ayn rhymes with mine. Ayn rhymes with mine.
Okay,
makes
so Ayn
sense.
Rand. And you also have some books. You want to tell people about your books?
Yeah, Free Market Revolution, How Ayn Rand's Ideas Can End Big Government, Equal is Unfair, and The Moral Case for Finance.
Equal is unfair. I agree with that, actually.
Yeah, equal is evil. Equal is bad.
So I have some questions for you. Obviously, we Sitch and I both consider ourselves liberal, and we're always fighting with people over the definition of liberal because a lot of times I think conservatives, they think of liberal as socialist. We're not really socialists. We're individualists. I think of liberalism as a desire to increase individual rights as much as possible without destroying society. That's kind of the way I conceptualize it. Is that the way you conceptualize liberalism, or is it a different way?
Well, I think one of the problems with the definition of liberalism, just like the problem with the definition of conservatism, is it's kind of fuzzy and not clear. I mean, what does it mean to increase individual rights without breaking society? What are individual rights? What is increasing individual rights? Is it that we have them or we don't have them? I think liberalism, and this is why you have classical liberals, you have kind of left-leaning liberals, which is what people think when they would think liberals are communists. You have European-style liberals, you have American-style liberals. I think liberalism is generally, historically, that movement that had, broadly speaking, a pro-liberty agenda, liberal liberty, but was never very specific about what that meant, and therefore branched out in lots of different directions and was very inconsistent. And as a consequence, I think is failing. I think
Well, if you go too far left, though, if you go more towards the communist realm, I do think you're impinging on individual freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's not liberal. So I agree with you. In a sense, American liberalism, which is left, is a perversion of the term. In Europe, liberal still means kind of pro-liberty, generally pro-markets, generally pro-individual rights, but not very radical about any one of those things. And they're much more classical liberal. Liberal means more of the classical liberal kind of view. It's only in America that the left kind of stole the word liberal and reinvented it as kind of a leftist, socialist program.
Yeah, I kind of like, though, that we are splitting it from liberal and progressive, and it really seems like the progressives are more of the socialist bent.
But again, it's a very bad use of the term, right? Because progressives in America are not for progress. And indeed, historically, the progressive movement, which started in the 19th century in the United States, was not a pro-progress movement, not in the sense of progress as we understand it. So again, they took a good word, progress, right? I'm a progressive. I believe in progress. And they've distorted and perverted it for some political gains. So it's kind of sad that I like socialism. I like capitalism. I like conservatism because it doesn't mean anything. What are they trying to conserve? But it represents something. It's kind of a status quo, uninteresting, which is what I think typical conservatives are. I don't like the terms progressive and liberal. Again, I think has been in America has been uprooted from, taken away from its roots and distorted, unfortunately.
What would you call yourself now? Do you call yourself a libertarian? I have a bunch of friends that have kind of strayed away from the term because of the current environment. Okay.
And Ayn Rand herself hated the term. She called libertarians right-wing hippies, and I think she was right.
Well,
back
that seems totally correct.
And so, no, I do not call myself a libertarian, primarily because libertarianism is another one of those concepts, similar to liberal and to conservative, that means nothing. It's like a big tent umbrella that includes kind of free market Republicans all the way to Hamas loving, Putin loving, anti immigration anarchists. And I don't want to be in that tent. I don't want to be among those people, you know. So I call myself an objectivist. My political philosophy is capitalism. I'm a capitalist as opposed to a socialist or middle of the road mixed economist. I believe in laissez-faire capitalism. So politically, I'm a capitalist. Philosophically, I'm an objectivist.
Right. Okay. Well, the place where I think we probably disagree is on the morality, and I think we can. Let me articulate my critique of objectivism, and we'll kind of see where the conversation goes. You conceptualize selfishness as a moral behavior, correct?
Yes, well, it's a standard by which all moral behavior should be judged.
Right. Okay. I there's this idea that selfishness beats altruism within groups, right? But altruistic groups beat selfish groups. And I think nature as it stands is really groups fighting against other groups. So, go ahead. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. I mean, I don't conceptualize anything that way, right? And it's not clear to me that that's even true. You know, I think groups that are motivated by this, that where the individuals are motivated by their own self-interest, beat altruistic groups any day, all the time.
So,
I mean, and that would be true in sports, and that would be true in military campaigns, and it would be true in economics. That's why corporations are so cool, right? Corporations are these groups of self-interested individuals, all trying to kind of maximize their own well-being over the long run in a rational way, and they do phenomenally well economically,
well,
as compared to a commune or like a co-op where everybody's an altruist and they're running the business based on everybody within the group being an altruist, and they can't compete against the corporation. And I think that's true of a country which is based on individual rights and therefore based on the self-interest of individuals like America versus a communist country that is based on everybody being an altruist and sacrificing for the common good. America is going to beat the communist country every single time, and economically, militarily, in any respect. So no, self-interest is the driving force of achievement in human life. And groups of self-interested individuals are going to be the most productive, the strongest, and indeed the most cohesive.
well, I totally agree with you that self-interest is the state of nature. And in the economic realm with the corporations and stuff like that, I agree with everything that you're saying. Where you get into the realm of military campaigns versus other military campaigns, there is an element of self-sacrifice that's often involved in there. The classic example is the guy that jumps on the grenade to save his entire platoon, right? Someone's got to jump on the grenade, and that's the ultimate selfless act. So in that
Well,
situation, I can conceptualize it from a selfish perspective. I can say, look, the guy who jumps on the grenade is jumping on the grenade because that's going to gain him a higher status. People are going to remember it. His family is probably going
he's
to be
dead though.
taken care of. Yeah,
Yeah.
but the status might be conferred to his family. The tribe might take care of his family. The military is going to take care of his family. I think they even call them gold star families, right? They
So
take
I
care of them
think
going forward. So just let me finish real quick. If the exchange is status for that, the question for me is you have to imbue society where we're going to exchange status for that selfish act. And in objectivism, if you're saying, well, the selfish guy is just a schlub, that he shouldn't be selfish at all, then you're kind of demotivating people from doing these selfless acts. And that could prevent your tribe from being strong enough to actually beat a tribe that does have this meme of selfishness. Is that a
so.
good argument? Is that a rational argument?
No, no, for a variety of reasons. Um, First, I wouldn't use the word schlub, and I
Uh-huh.
don't, so I
Okay.
don't know what that means. But anyway, the major problem with that argument, although again we'll get to the grenade in a minute, is the issue of status. Status is insignificant. It is unimportant. It is not self-interested. It's not self-interested to gain status. It is completely second-handed. It makes you a dependent on other people. Other people have to give you status. What matters is self-esteem. What matters is your own assessment of your own ability and your own worth, not other people's assessment of your own worth. This is really the theme for those of you who haven't read it of The Fountainhead. You should read it. It's about who you are, not about what other people think of who you are. Who the F cares what other people think. So I'll start with that. But look, if we'll go back to the grenade. It completely depends on what kind of a political system you're fighting for. So if you're jumping on the grenade in order to save the communist regime or to save Hitler or to save Hamas, then absolutely you are being a what you're doing is immoral and it's self-sacrificial and it's absurd. And and if you had a choice, you shouldn't even be fighting and you shouldn't be in the army. That's not in your self-interest because you're fighting for a cause that is destructive to your own life and to the life of the people you love. On the other hand, if you're fighting for a cause, for a political system that is essentially based on freedom, and you're fighting in self-defense, that is, you didn't start the war, you're fighting in self-defense, then you're jumping on the grenade because you realize that your life is not worth living under slavery. You realize that this is what's required for the people you love, you care about in a selfish way, what's required for them to preserve their freedom. So you're jumping in the grenade because you wouldn't want to live in a world in which you don't jump on a grenade and therefore you lose and there's no freedom in the world. So you're fighting for a selfish value, which is freedom for you and the people you love. Otherwise, don't fight. Otherwise, stay home. That is the only, and this is why it's also true that self-interest limits war. It reduces war, it reduces conflict, because fighting is the last thing you want to do. You're risking your life, which is horrible. You only have one of those. You don't care about status after you're dead, but you do want the people you love to be free, not taken care of. Taken care of is terrible. Being taken care of is again, serfs are taken care of. What you want is freedom. So if you're fighting for freedom, it's worthwhile, and you need to limit the wars to those wars that are necessary to preserve your freedom, and there are not many wars like that.
Well, I agree with most of what you said.
Generally, self-interest and capitalism induce peace.
Well, I agree with most of what you said. The only part I would push back on is that the separating status from human nature. One of the things that I like about capitalism is capitalism channels people's desire for status into a positive direction. I think a lot of people build companies and build various organizations that make life better for people because they want to gain status, where people at one time gain status from killing other people and taking over their land. Now we want to take over economically, which I think is.
I don't think that's true at all. I mean, if you look at Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos, they weren't motivated by status. They were motivated by love. They were motivated by the beauty of production and the beauty of creating great products and making something that was cool and amazing. They weren't motivated by being at the top of some kind of heap or something like that. So no, I don't think people are at all motivated by status. I mean, some people are, but it's irrational, right? I mean, the beauty of human beings is that much of the values we choose are chosen and not embedded in our DNA. Some people do try to achieve status, and they're typically unhappy and not very successful people. I think the people who really succeed in life are people who don't care about status, whose status doesn't even enter their thinking. They care about, producing, taking care of themselves, and enjoying what they do. And pursuing productivity because they know that productivity is where they're going to get their self-esteem, and that's how you gain happiness. So status is an irrational motivation that true many people engage in, but they typically go into politics, and which is not a particularly productive field. And it's not a motivation that actually leads to happiness or success in any kind of way. And again, I think status, the orientation towards status is not genetic, it's social. And it's driven by an altruistic morality that tells you that morality is all about the other. Other people are more important than you. Other people's opinions are more important than you. What other people do, other people say is what's important. And an objectivism, reject that completely. What's important is what I think, not what you think.
That's fascinating. So your look, I think people do put too much emphasis on status. So I agree with you there. I think disciplining yourself not to be obsessed with status, I think, is a good thing. Ultimately, I do think a lot of people do focus on status, maybe to their own detriment. I don't know if you could separate it from human nature, though. So that's the only place where I
I
mean,
don't
it's
think
tough for me to
status is in human
conceptualize it that
nature.
way.
I think we overestimate what human nature is. Human nature is to be rational. And that opens up possibilities of what exactly kind of rational or what we actually do. That, it's up to us. We have free will and we get to shape our nature. So, to a large extent, human nature is a myth if you go beyond the idea of we have certain capabilities, but we have certain inclinations, but our ideas and status is an idea. It's the idea that other people are more important than you. That is learned. That has nothing to do with human nature. Human nature is to be rational and to choose the best, to choose values. Which values? Based on what? That is all up to human choice.
So is it fair to say that you conceptualize status as bad because you're giving other people power over you? Is that
Yeah,
kind
absolutely.
of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Well,
totally fascinating.
I,
You want to jump
I,
in, Sitch? Go ahead.
yeah, I think that I definitely agree that it is in human nature to have the potential to be rational. I don't think people are born. I always say this. I don't think people are born with free will. I think you have to kind of fight for it. And but in terms of like the status question, it's interesting because the way that I think that I conceptualize it, I think the way that Adam conceptualizes is that it's hard for me to imagine that you have an animal that would evolve that exists in some sort of group-based structure like humans that doesn't have some sort of evolved tendency towards hierarchical organization or status-seeking behavior. And it's hard to see like how you could have, hunter gatherers or really any human society where there is not a hierarchy that comes out of status and competency. And that is sort of how people know like who to follow, who has the good ideas, as opposed to everyone just trying to do their own thing and not work together.
So a few things there. First, I want to agree with you in a sense. I think that rationality is something you have to earn. You have to work at. You have to actually engage. We have an on-off switch, which is what I think free will ultimately is. It's the on is think, the off is don't think, and
Mm-hmm.
many people choose not to think. So in that sense, yeah, once you choose not to think, free will is irrelevant. It becomes irrelevant because you're not a rational, you're not in that sense a rational being. You're a mimicking being. You start mimicking everybody else because that's how you survive. In terms of status, look, status is not the same as hierarchy. Of course, hierarchies exist. People are better at some things than other things. People are going to be leaders and other people followers in a particular context and might flip in a different context. All of that is true, but that doesn't make I need to be a hero. I need to be a leader. In terms of that is my human nature is to be at the top of the status podium. I think that's ridiculous. The reality is that many of us are quite satisfied not to be at the top of whatever that thing is, as long as we're doing something we love and something we really care about. And look, one of the great advantages of getting out of hunter-gatherer societies and out of subsistence farming and out of barely surviving is the kind of division of labor society and the kind of richness of opportunities we have today
Mm-hmm.
in which we're not reliant on one hierarchy. There are a million hierarchies, and we can fit in and slot in all kinds of places, in all kinds of hierarchies, in all kinds of ways. In some places, I'm at the top in the hierarchy, and in some places, I'm at the bottom. And I don't really care if I'm at the bottom in some hierarchies because those are that's what those are the kind of choices I've made about my life.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I agree completely with like, I think it's one of the benefits of capitalism is we've talked about this a lot, creating so many different hierarchies or games or whatever we want to call it that people can succeed in. Because if you don't, then, obviously it's going to breed a lot of animosity and revolution and violence if there's only a couple paths to success.
Yep.
Um, I guess when I think of status, I just think of maybe we're just defining it differently. I think of it kind of just like the perception that other people have of where you slot into a hierarchy. And
Yeah.
so and I also view it as that so much of human behavior is based around like reproduction and mate selection, and that it seems that males generally, not everyone, and obviously this is, we're trying to be rational beings, so things, are different and they can be different, but it seems like there's a broader theme of men trying to achieve status or climb hierarchies in order to attract women, essentially.
I think that's all right, but it's very unhealthy and it leads to unhappiness.
Hmm.
So I think that's right. Instead of focusing on being the best that you can be, and that's a cliche, but it's true, being the best that you can be, given who you are, focusing on how other people perceive you is a route to unhappiness. It's a route to self-destruction. And it's ultimately a route to not being very successful, I think, with women. I think the right kind of women, again, there are lots of women
Right.
who care about status, who care about how other people think of you. But is that the woman you want versus a woman who cares about you and who you are and how you fit with her, in every kind of sense. So I think the more we focus on how we look to other people, the cheaper we make our lives and the less fulfilling our lives become.
Right. No, I agree, and it could be kind of a paradoxical situation where the more you focus on something like I have to climb the SAS hierarchy, the more, even if you accomplish that, you could be selling pieces of yourself. Could becoming a more, degenerate or immoral person, or you could be in a more unhappier state where if you are more focused on yourself and just trying to be that the best you can be, you will hopefully naturally attract, better people around yourself,
Exactly.
better life circumstances around yourselves, and things of that nature. So yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, I agree. I think it's kind of like that this is the human nature that I guess that we're fighting against constantly. And that's sort of what is where a lot of our problems come from. But I want to ask you about, because you were talking about self-interest, and what exactly do you mean when you use that phrase?
I mean, that which is in the interest of the individual, and what I mean, and when I think about interest, I mean that which promotes an individual's flourishing, happiness,
Hmm.
well-being. And I think some of those things are universal. That is, I think there's certain principles that every individual must pursue if they're going to achieve flourishing and happiness. And then, of course, there are lots of optional values in terms of the particulars. Those are all personal and those are all going to be different. But they are guiding principles, and those are the moral principles. So I view morality. Morality is that field in philosophy that should teach you how to live a flourishing, successful, prosperous, ultimately happy life. That's the function of the field of morality, and that's how Aristotle, by the way, viewed it.
Hmm. Can self-interest lead people down either destructive paths for themselves or for everyone around them?
No, because fundamentally, if you think about what's in your self-interest, the fundamental thing to now look, you can make mistakes, you can make errors that lead to self-destruction,
Right, right.
but I'm not counting errors, right? You can
Yeah.
always make mistakes. Fundamentally, what is required to live a self-interested life is to live as a human being and to live by your nature. And what does that mean? That means to be rational. So the great moral achievement is to be a rational animal, is to be a rational being, is to live rationally. And I think if you live rationally, if you think through what you're about to do and why you're about to do it, and you think about your motivations and you think about the consequences, then you're very unlikely to go down a path that leads to self-destruction. And if you actually think about the kind of world you want to live in and kind of relationship you want to have with other people, because other people are really, really important to your own well-being, then you're not gonna engage in actions that destroy other people's lives. That'll lead to living in a kind of society that is, destructive to your own happiness and your own well-being.
Well, yeah, I guess why I was asking for the definition or how you're perceiving is because I think most people when they hear the term self-interest, like people perceive it as meaning like selfish and it's kind of
Mhm.
in like try to figure out the difference because
There
I guess
is
like
no
an
difference.
example.
Selfish is the same thing. The
Mhm.
difference, the only thing is that we've turned it into a dirty word, or a negative word, an evil word.
Right,
But
right.
that's because a morality of altruism, a morality that tells you that your moral purpose in life should be to sacrifice to others, and that's the most noble thing you can do, and is live like Mother Teresa. A morality like that, wants to make sure that you're not attracted by an alternative. So they make the alternative sound so horrific and disgusting. What does it mean to be selfish? It's to lie, cheat, steal, backstab, think only about the short term, party all day, party all night. Who cares about the future? If that's what selfish means, then okay, all I've got is altruism. It's the only moral code I have. And most people hold those two alternatives as the only two things possible.
Hmm.
And what Ayn Rand is saying is no, there's actually a third alternative, which is to be actually selfish, which means to actually care about yourself, which means to actually view your life over the long run and to view yourself as a human being and therefore as rational and to live that kind of life. And that's what morality should be about. So to live a rational, long-term, self-interested life is what she means when she says to be selfish.
So, like for example, what would be how would it be not self-interested for like a private equity firm? Say they do some kind of LBO, they buy some company, they leverage it with debt, and then they can't pay it off, so they gut the company, and they go away with a bunch of profit when they got the company and sell it for parts, but the company falls apart and all those people lose their jobs. Would the people doing that from the private equity standpoint, who made all the money, are they acting as self-interested actors in that moment?
Maybe. It might be very difficult for them, for example, to buy another company. Let me just say, I don't buy the description you just made. I don't
Hmm.
think it works financially. That is, I don't think you can do what you just described doing. And we can go into in examples. I'm a finance guy. I've studied LBOs. I'm a huge fan of LBOs. I think LBOs are very healthy. And what you describe, I think, is just a caricature of what actually happens. But let's say that did happen. They were just nasty people, and somehow they figured out a way how to screw everybody else and make money for themselves. Well, if I'm the guy that they're approaching now, to buy the company from, and typically, I might even keep an equity stake because that's how a lot of LBOs happen. Is when you buy something, you keep an out. Well, I don't want to have anything to do with these people because they're going to screw me. They screwed the last bunch of people. Why would they not screw me? And in the long run, it's probably not in the interest of a private equity firm to function that way. Again, I don't think private equity functions that way. I think part of its success is part of how they've grown so much is a consequence of the fact that they don't function that way.
Hmm.
That private equity is overall win, 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 win. Yes, there might be some losers, but in the big picture, it's a massive win for almost everybody. But we could get into the details of some examples
Oh
if
yeah,
you.
we don't have to get into details of the specifics. I'm just trying to think of like more
Just
on
just
the
to let the audience know, LBO is a leveraged buyout. Just no one
Leverage.
really said it.
yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, but
that's
I'm just
okay.
trying to think of it more on like a conceptual level because I know that like
Yeah, I mean at
me and
the
Adam
concept.
believe a lot about the
Yeah,
importance of democracy is that kind of aligning that the leader's interests are with the people because if you have these situations where you have like monarchies or dictatorships, they only like the leader, at least from how I would define it, could be entirely self-interested in that they are extracting resources from as many people as possible, and as long as they can pay off, the military and the people in charge, like that's going to be totally fine for them, and they could
sure.
live a successful, in finger quotes, a successful life where they're rich and have kids and all these other things, while everyone
Sure.
else is suffering.
So I would say that any self-interested person who was offered the job of king or dictator would turn them down.
Hmm.
It's not in your self-interest to be in that position. It's not in your self-interest to rule over others. It's not in your self-interest to exploit other people. If you know, assuming it's real exploitation, it's not in your self-interest to lie or cheat or steal. I tell people all the time, if you're not sure about lying, just try it. Like try it for a day. You know, lie to your best friend, for a day and see what happens, or lie to your boss for a day and see what happens. It's not in your self-interest. It'll come back and destroy you. And the same thing, by the way, is and stealing is the same thing. You know, people who have done pyramid schemes and stolen, they're miserable, pathetic, unhappy people. Bernie Madoff being a great example of that. I don't know. You guys may be too young to know who Bernie Madoff was,
No,
but
No, we know Bernie Madoff.
yeah.
Bernie Madoff is a great example of somebody who said he's happier in jail than he was before he was caught, because stealing and deceiving other people is unbelievably damaging to one's own psyche.
Didn't he lie to a bunch of people though? He's probably lying now.
Unbelievable lies. He was a horrible human being. I mean, he was just, but he lived it, right? So he couldn't sleep. He was constantly in fear of being caught, not by the police, but his family and his best friends might catch him that
Right,
he's
yeah.
stealing their money. You know, it's just not a good strategy. So Bernie Madoff is a good example of how lying, cheating, stealing, exploiting other people is self-destructive, not self-interested. Oh, take Stalin. Take somebody like Stalin, right? You say, oh, well, he had all the power in the world. He did self-interested things. But why was he so miserable and afraid? He lived in constant fear. And, you know, one of his best friends was the guy who ran the KGB. And yet he was afraid of him. He constantly thought the guy was going to kill him. He couldn't have any honest human relationship with anybody because he constantly lived in fear. You cannot find me an example of anybody who was a king or authoritarian who actually was self-interested in the sense that he lived a flourishing, successful life. I mean, maybe this is why, you wouldn't want that job. You wouldn't want that job because it cannot lead you to actual success in life.
Hmm. Okay, I understand.
Run the experiment, right? Run the
Right.
thought experiment or run the historical experiment, and you'll see that it just doesn't work. What works is being productive and being honest and having integrity and living a life of pride where you're proud of your own moral character. So that is what is going to lead you to be successful and happy, not sacrificing to other people, but also not asking other people to sacrifice to you, living by your own means,
Hmm.
by your own work and being successful. It's why anytime we inhibit people's ability to think for themselves, work for themselves, we inhibit their ability to be successful and happy.
Why
And I
do
think
you
the welfare state, for example, is incredibly destructive of human happiness as a concept.
Why do you think that so many people engage in that self-destructive behavior of lying, cheating, and stealing then?
Well, because a lot of things. One is we don't teach them a proper morality. We teach them a morality that says don't lie, not because lying is bad for you. We teach them don't lie because you should care about other people more than you care about yourself. And they go, yeah, but I don't really care about other people that much. And I feel like lying. And we never tell them don't act on your feelings. Act only in reason, act only on rationality. If Bernie Madoff had sat down for like 10 minutes before he made that first lie, before he deceived that first guy, and thought it through, thought what happens in pyramid schemes, thought about how this was going to play out, if he thought about it, if he'd been rational about it, he would have never done it. When we get into trouble, when almost anybody gets into trouble, they get into trouble and afterwards they go, "Ugh, I should have thought about it more," right? Because we follow our emotions. Emotions lead you into trouble. Not thinking, in other words, leads you into trouble. So we teach people a false morality, a morality of self-sacrifice. They reject that, but they have no alternative. They're not taught Ayn Rand's morality, which is a morality to achieve flourishing and happiness. Nobody teaches that. So they have this dichotomy of I can be self-sacrifice and live for other people. I don't want to do that. That sounds boring and sucks. Or I can steal some money and party all day. I'd rather do that. And even though it's self-destructive. And the third alternative, which is what I'm advocating for, is not even on the table. Nobody even knows it exists. So I think it's the right morality. It's a morality that, other than two philosophers in all of human history, has not been advocated for.
Mhm.
And it's a morality that would change the world if it was advocated for.
Hmm. Adam,
Just
did
on
you?
on the Bernie Madoff thing.
Yeah.
It's so hard for me to separate the idea of status. It's just integral to my worldview. It seems like Bernie Madoff, his reputation was built on sand. Like trustworthiness is a form of status, but wealth is also a form of status. So Bernie Madoff thought, I will take the shortcut to the status. And this is why he was constantly conflicted, because he knew if anyone found out, his status was really fake. It was a fraudulent form of status. And as soon as everybody found out, his status would plummet
Sure.
to,
I mean, that could have been his motivation. I don't know, but it could have just been purely the money. It
hmm,
could have just been the money. I want money. I'm going to take the shortcut to get money. Money will buy me a yacht. Money will buy me a nice house. Money will buy me whatever. So there could have been a bunch of different motivations. Status might have been one of them. This is the sense in which status is a destructive motivation. Don't be motivated by status. Don't be motivated by money. Be
well,
motivated by achieving, achieving through production what you're capable of achieving for its own sake, for the sake of producing, for the sake of creating, for the sake of building. And so Bernie did all those things, but he also had to realize one of the reasons he was nervous was not just because maybe people would discover and he'd lose status, but how about jail? That made him nervous that he would go to jail, that he would lose all the money, not only because it would reduce his status, but also because he couldn't spend it, and that he would lose the love of the people around him. I mean, a lot of the people around him loved him because they thought he was an honest, productive, good human being. And when they would discover that he was not an honest, good human being, maybe they would stop loving him, and that's his family. That's not a status. That's an issue of wanting the people you love to love you back. It is interesting that his son, basically, Bernie Madoff was turned into the police by his sons. His two sons turned him in. One of those sons committed suicide about a year
yeah,
after that.
I
So
remember.
Bernie Madoff just created for himself a horrible life. And again, my point is, if you pursue status as an end, or if you pursue lying, cheating, stealing, that's not selfish. You don't gain from it. You lose. You actually live a horrible, pathetic life.
Well, convincing people of that, I think, is difficult. Obviously, people tend to learn the
It,
hard way. So
it,
I,
it,
I
it
mean,
that,
I totally agree
that's
with what you're
true, but
saying about the honesty.
it should be, but it shouldn't be because we all know that in third grade. I mean, we all learn it very early. We learn what happens when we try to grab a toy from somebody else. We learn what happens when we lie. But yes, it's an achievement. Look, it's an achievement to think of man as a rational being. It's an achievement to realize that happiness is related to rationality and related to the long term, not to the short term. All of those are achievements, and yeah, it's not easy to the achievements are not easy, and we're obviously at a point in civilization where the world is not quite ready for this particular achievement. It's something we're struggling with.
Well, we're obviously talking a lot about morality. Do you have a definition of morality that you like? How would you define morality?
Yeah, morality is a code of values that helps man choose between what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is evil. And then you have to define good and evil. And that will your moral code will be different depending on how you define good and evil. But morality is the same thing, right? No matter what, it's providing you with a map on to life. And it could be a self-sacrificial life, and that's what morality is. Good is to sacrifice, and bad is to think about yourself, which is conventional morality. Or it could be the objectivist morality. It says the good is that which furthers your own life, and bad is that which damages your own life. And then that gives you a different map to live your life. Different people are going to live different lives based on the morality that they choose. I'm saying one is a good morality and one's a bad morality, and you should choose the good one.
I totally agree. Morality is a code for behavior of right and wrong behavior. How how does that do you believe in objective morality? Do you believe in multiple moralities? It sounds like you believe in multiple
No, absolutely an
moralities.
objective morality, 100% objective morality, and it's objective because it's based on human nature and the facts of reality. So how do we decide what is a virtue or what is a value worth pursuing? Does it further human life? Right? So I look around and I see all the stuff that human life requires: shelter, food, lighting in the modern internet in the modern world, video streaming, and I ask myself, how do we get that? Where does that come from? And it's obvious that all of that comes from reason. And at the very basic, even hunter-gatherers have to use reason. Human beings are so weak and pathetic that you cannot run down a bison and bite into it. You have to figure out weapons and strategies and tactics in order to hunt a bison. All of that requires reason. So reason is my top value because reason is the way in which human beings survive. And it should be everybody's top value because it's universal. All human beings need reason in order to survive. Or somebody else's reason. Like if you're a parasite, which unfortunately a lot of people are, then they live off of other people's reason, right? They live off other people's production, other people's innovation, other people's work.
So there are multiple moralities, but the one where you
There's
have
only one
reason
right,
as a
correct morality. The multiple moralities, there's only one objective, correct morality. That's what I meant before.
right. Okay. So someone who values selflessness, that's the root of their morality. That morality,
Yeah, but they're wrong.
it exists, but it's not objectively correct.
It's
That's
not
where,
objectively correct and it's
okay.
actually destructive. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about the politics of the current moment since we've got you here. And there's some, do you consider yourself on the right or on the left politically?
I don't consider myself on the right or on the left.
Okay. So,
I believe the political spectrum is wrong. Right, left have always been meaningless, but are particularly meaningless today. I consider the correct political spectrum being collectivism to individualism. And there are lots of forms of collectivism. Collectivism meaning the primacy of the group over the individual. And you can be on the left and a collectivist, socialism, communism, and you can be on the right, be a collectivist, fascism, and it's all its variations. And most people today, soft collectivists, they're kind of in the middle. They like, they still want to sacrifice the individual to a group, but not too much. A little bit, they want to pretend they're for rights, but not too much, not principled in any principled way. And then I'm an individualist. I don't want to sacrifice individual rights ever to anybody.
well, I kind of see it that way too, where I see the individualism as kind of the center of the political spectrum. And if you go too
I don't
far
think it's
right,
a sense because it's not a mixture. So you have it's like an arrow, right? Individualism's over here, collectivism's over here, and collectivism splinters into a bunch of different variations of
so
collectivism.
individualism is on the left.
It doesn't matter,
Well, look,
right?
I think if you go too far left, then obviously you get into collectivism again. You get into a different brand of
Yeah, that's why I don't
collectivism,
like
but
left and right. I like
right.
one spectrum, individualism on one side, collectivism on the other. You choose which side you want it.
Which way the arrow goes. Okay.
I view Republicans and Democrats today, in particular, as both collectivists, and both almost equally evil. And I think and when you go to the extremes, that's certainly the case. But I think that's to some extent always been the case. They've always been anti-individual rights. They want to take away different rights, but they both left and right are anti-individual rights. So individualism is separate from the conventional left and right spectrum, which just is a question of left and right disagree on which rights they should violate, not on the principles involved.
So, do you subscribe to any partisan politics at all?
I no, I mean, I'd say in most elections, in the past, I've tilted towards Republicans,
Okay. Yeah, that's my
but
question.
but now, no. I mean, with these Republicans, no, I don't. And it depends on the Republican, right? If you're a Nick Fuentes Republican, I'd probably vote for a Democrat. But if you're a woke, globalized intifada Democrat, then I'm probably going to vote for a Republican. So it really depends on the kind, right, of Democrat or Republican. But I voted Democratic. I voted Republican for president. Depending, I mean, I vote strategically. I think about the long-term consequences, and I also realize my particular vote doesn't matter that much.
Well, here's the Sophie's choice that we're kind of in right now because it could be a Nick Fuentes Republican against globalize the Intifada
I stay home.
Democrat.
I stay home. I've stayed home. I've stayed home when it was Trump versus Hillary. I stayed home Trump versus Biden. I do not view it. I don't think voting is that important. And
Well, one of those candidates is going to win, though, obviously, if that's the
yeah, but
situation,
I don't
right?
have to sanction his victory.
Right, totally. But we're going to have to live under their policy proposals.
That is the
That's
reality, and it's going to suck
yeah.
either way.
It,
That's the
it is. Why are we? So the situation on the
So I
right.
try to convince people, that there's a better alternative. So before the Republican primaries, I try to convince people that Trump was the worst candidate he wasn't even on the stage, but in the primary, and to vote for anybody but Trump. I failed dramatically. Once it was Trump versus Biden, I emphasized in my show why Trump was as bad as he was because I knew that everybody who listens to me is already anti-Biden. So I wanted to make the case that they should be also anti-Trump. And then what exactly they voted on election day, is less important than the knowledge that they should take with them that both candidates really, really, really sucked.
We don't really try to persuade our audience as much as we just argue out politics. So it is interesting. You are participating in the political process
Sure,
on your
absolutely.
show if you're advocating for one candidate over another candidate. So
Well, I'm always trying to show how, with exception of good candidates, I think it's rare that they're good candidates. I'm trying to show how bad the bad candidates are.
right,
I long for the day where there's a candidate I could get excited about. Maybe if I lived in Argentina, I could get excited about Milei. I mean, I get excited about Milei even living in America, but Milei is about as good of a politician as we have in the world today by my standards.
right, because he's more libertarian. He's more free markets.
He's free market, and that's his emphasis. And he's willing, he's not just a free marketer that just says it. He understands it. He's an economist and he really understands it. And he's shown over the last year that he's willing to do it, which takes a lot of courage. A lot of people go into office saying, I'm going to do this, that, or the other, and don't do anything. He's actually doing it. So he actually has the balls to follow through.
How would you advocate now with the current rift in the Republican Party? There's obviously this rise of Nick Fuentes as a public figure who's an avowed and open anti-Semite, and you've got a lot of moderate Republicans, I think, that are trying to protect the Republican brand, and you've kind of got. I mean, it's kind of devolving into a shit show for no better terminology.
Well, I mean, I don't. I think it's a shit show because the people running the Republican Party are afraid of Nick Fuentes. So the only reason it's a shit show is that people like Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and the head of Heritage and the head of other think tanks in Washington D.C. are afraid of Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. So as a consequence, they are trying to distance themselves from anti-Semitism and at the same time not wanting to piss off all the anti-Semites. That's a really tough trick, and they're struggling, and it's a shit show. It would have been really easy if pretty much everyone call them the establishment Republicans just said we're against anti-Semitism, and if you associate with the Nick Fuentes of the world, we will have nothing to do with you, and to hell with you, Tucker Carlson. That would have not been a shit show. That would have ended it. That's what they should have done, but they can't because they actually, look, Donald Trump has been winking and giving little thumbs up to the racist right from the beginning. I mean, he did it at Charlottesville, and he's done it throughout his career. He kind of he doesn't he condemns them. He says the right things, but he's winking and he's giving them a thumbs up in a right kind of way to give them every indication that he's actually on their side. And J.D. Vance, by announcing himself to be a post-liberal, national conservative, Christian conservative, is almost there right with them. What's the big difference between him and Fuentes? So, yeah, I mean, the Republican Party is a shit show. I mean, they deserve everything that's happening to them.
The
They've walked right into it. They've made the bed. They've made this bed. So
You're saying that they're trying to keep the coalition together, which implies that they would want the Nick Fuentes fans to vote for them in the next election. But Nick Fuentes has been open about not wanting to vote for JD Vance because he's married, he's in an interracial marriage and all kinds of things.
look, Tucker Carlson is really good friends with JD Vance. His son works for JD Vance. I have no doubt in my mind that, at least in Tucker Carlson's mind, one of the reasons he did such a softball interview with Nick Fuentes is to try to ultimately bring him on board, bring him into the coalition, and get him on board with JD Vance.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So I don't think he succeeded yet, but I think they'll keep trying. And look, and Nick Fuentes is going to be normalized within the party. It looks that way. Now, whether JD Vance ultimately is the candidate, I don't know. I mean, he's not particularly likable, and I don't know what the people who vote in the primaries will actually think of him. He was not very popular when he picked him as vice president. So we'll see. I'm not very good at the politics side of it, but look, what's his name? Fuentes is a despicable human being. He is an anti-Semite. He is a racist. He's got plenty of videos where he praises Hitler. There's no shortage of that for those who might be confused about this. He attacks the Jews, not just the Jews who support Israel, but he attacks the Jews. And the reason he ultimately hates on Israel, the only reason he ultimately hates on Israel, versus hating on Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Iran, is because they're Jews. I mean, because otherwise, Israel is much more aligned with America than Saudi Arabia, which today got the best. I mean, MBS today in the White House got the best treatment from Donald Trump than any other foreign leader in the world. And I'm sure Nick Fuentes didn't complain about that, right? So, but every time Netanyahu shows up, he complains. So the only motivation is, and why do they care about? I don't know. Tucker Carlson claims he cares about Christians. Why do they care about Israel, where the Christians have equal rights to Jews, and not care about other places where Christians are being slaughtered? So all of this is motivated by anti-Semitism, by hatred of Jews because they're Jews. It's the opposite. It's not that they hate Jews because Jews support Israel. It's that they hate Israel because Israel is a place with lots of Jews. And all you have to do is really follow the logic of their own arguments, and you can see that. It's sad that we live in an America today where anti-Semitism is prevalent. It's not even hidden on the left and on the right.
Yeah, it's
It really is stunning to me
pervasive.
we've reached this point.
There is ultimately a cost, I think, to bringing Nick Fuentes into the Republican Party. A hit to the Republican brand seems obvious. I mean, all the stuff he's saying is going to be in Democratic ads in the midterms, and I'm sure in the next presidential election. I
I think that's right, but it also depends on who the Democrats choose, right? If they choose an AOC, then a lot of what the what do you call it, the what do you call those four Democratic
the
congresswomen,
The
the
squad.
squad, yeah.
the squad,
Well, don't they have
will
the
have a
same
lot of
exact problem though? On the left,
yeah,
and I mean, you can make the argument that this was the problem that Kamala Harris had in the last election, and why she lost,
absolutely.
because she did the exact same thing, trying to incorporate the globalized, the Intifada crowd into the
See,
Democratic coalition. They
yeah,
would never vote for them. They
I
tried
agree.
to appease them, and by trying to appease them, they took a giant hit to the Democratic brand, which probably cost them the election.
I agree with you completely. But look, the reality is that somebody like JD Vance, now, Donald Trump doesn't believe in anything, so it doesn't really matter. But JD Vance believes in something. He has a set of beliefs, and his beliefs are centered around conservative, kind of national conservatism, or even Christian conservatism. He is good friends with the post-liberal Deneen and Vermeulen and these guys who really do believe the Constitution is meaningless, and they really want to completely change the Republican Party. Uh, and to that extent, he can't rely on the center. He can't rely on independence. So the independents are probably not going to go there. So he has to decide: is he going to go to the center, or is he going to go to Nick Fuentes? And the reality is, that Nick Fuentes is closer to JD Vance's ideas, to the extent that he has them, right? I mean, to the extent that they're consistent, than is the center. So that's where he's gravitating towards. I think it's destructive. I mean, I don't really care about destroying the Republican Party. I have no chips in that game. I care about destroying the country. I think it's unbelievably destructive to the country as the Democrats move to appease the globalized intifada and the right moves towards appeasing Nick Fuentes. What are we left with? What kind of a country do we have? Both are anti-Semitic, both are racist, both are collectivists, both are statists. You could argue both are socialists, right? They don't believe in free markets. Then is this a country any of us want to live in? This is unbelievably destructive to America.
Yeah, it's totally terrifying. Do you conceptualize JD Vance as a theocrat?
Not a theocrat, if you mean in the sense of Iran, right? He's not going to be a mullah who rules, but a theocrat in the sense of he believes there should be no separation between church and state. I believe he doesn't believe in separation of church and state. If you go again, if you read Deneen, who is a good friend of his, if you read the post-liberal kind of integralists who are very influential, J.D. Vance converted to Catholicism. These guys are all Catholic converts, which is just interesting. All these right-wing post-liberals are Catholic converts. They believe Catholic religion should play a big role in government. They don't believe in the separation of state and church. And so if you mean by that, then yeah, he is a, what was the word?
Theocrat. Yeah,
He is a theocrat.
Democrats are definitely going to try to paint him as a theocrat in the next election. So
He's
that's
owned
on
it.
the
So
table.
he's owned it. I don't like him. I wouldn't vote for him. And what we need is an alternative. And I don't know where that alternative will come from. I don't know if Republicans will choose an alternative. I don't know. Elon Musk threatened to start a third party. I wish he'd done it. What we need is a real well-funded, well-organized third party that starts organizing now and doesn't wait the last minute.
Right. Do you ever watch Batya Unger Sargon? She's a huge Trump fan, and she conceptualizes Trump as a middle class, a protector of the middle class, a protector of jobs. She has a completely different look at Trump
She's
than most
nuts.
people.
I mean, the thing about her,
Well, that's what I was going to
I
ask.
mean, she has no training in economics. She is an economic ignoramus.
So you do know her?
What's that? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, she's everywhere. She's an economic ignoramus who constantly opines on economics. She doesn't know anything about economics. She's not trained in it. Her views are the epitome of ignorance when it comes to it. So Donald Trump cares about the middle class. He doesn't care about anybody other than his narcissistic emotions. Tariffs don't help the middle class. They destroy the middle class. Taking a 10% stake in Intel doesn't help the middle class. It's destructive to the middle class. Jay says,
how is it destructive?
Like,
his policy proposal. He's talking about taking the tariffs and giving the $2,000 check. So basically, giving the earnings from the tariffs to the middle class. How is that not helping the middle class?
So the middle class paid. So that money, the tariffs, that money is taxes being placed on the middle class that they were taxed. Now they're going to get their money back, only to be taxed again in order to fill the hole created in the budget because they got the money, right? So let's be really clear here. The United States today, with the tariffs, is running 1.8 trillion. That's a trillion, right? Right? $1.8 trillion deficit
Per year, yeah.
Per year, on top of a $37 trillion debt.
Yeah, total debt.
So if we pay everybody a $2,000 check, the deficit grows to $2.2 trillion because it's about $300 billion. $2.2 trillion. Who's going to pay that? Who's going to pay that? The middle class will have to pay it down the road in future taxes. So he's screwing the middle class left and right. and he's pretending that he's helping them, and she is the fool who is going on television trying to sell the pretense to, unfortunately, pretty ignorant and unengaged middle class that doesn't really know what is going on.
Aren't the tariffs coming from the corporations? I conceptualize tariffs as just a corporate tax. The importers who are importing the goods are the ones that are paying the tariff.
So, a couple of things. One, corporations are not for profits. So the importers don't run it in a nonprofit way. If their costs go up, and taxes are cost, then prices go up. They pass the cost on to consumers. They have to. They have no choice. Otherwise, they go out of business. There's no importer that has a 20% margin on the stuff they import from Japan, or 50% margin on the stuff they import from China. Their margins are very small, so they pass the cost on to everybody else, right? And prices are going up. We know this. If you look at prices of tariffed goods, all of them are up. Aluminum is up. Steel is up. Prices of everything that's being tariffed has gone up. This is why he recently, in order to cut our cost of living, he recently lowered tariffs on bananas and coffee and all this stuff. Why? Because tariffs raise the cost, and if he cuts the tariffs, they reduce the cost. Otherwise, if the importers were absorbing it all, then cutting the tariff wouldn't have any impact on us. So no, you pay the tariff. There's no question about that. But think a little deeper. Every corporate tax is a tax on consumers. Corporations are not things. Corporations are just a legal something, right? So every corporate tax, every penny of corporate taxes, it's one of the dumbest taxes we have, is either paid by shareholders or by employees or by consumers. And based on all the financial research, almost all of corporate taxes are paid by employees in lower wages and by consumers in higher prices. So if you cut corporate taxes, prices go down generally and wages go up. And that happened when Donald Trump cut corporate taxes in 2017. The best thing he did probably in his time presidency. Wages went up and prices actually went down. So any corporate tax is going to be passed on to consumers, passed on to somebody. And there's just no way around that.
I am not in favor of corporate taxes, but if they have lower input costs and they can keep the prices higher because demand doesn't fall off, they will keep the prices higher. If they raise prices because of the tariffs and demand falls off, nobody wants the thing.
But clearly competition drives the prices down. If you get rid of corporate taxes, so they have less of a cost now, then we're competing. Then my incentive is to try to take market share from you, is to lower my price a little bit. I can afford to do because I'm not paying all these corporate taxes now. So I lower my price a little bit. You match it or lower a little bit more than me, and soon enough, prices have gone down to reflect the full corporate tax. This is how economics works, and it actually works in practice, not just in theory that way. Prices go down and go down.
There are two players, obviously, in that system, but there will be some sort of equilibrium where they both want their prices obviously as high as possible without a fall off in demand.
Sure, but the offsetting portion of that is that they have to provide their providers of capital with a certain return on capital that compensates the providers of capital for risk. Let's say that's 10%. And now because of corporate tax cuts, they're getting 15%. They will drive prices down until it's 10% again.
Right. What kind of economist would you call yourself?
I'm a free market economist. I most closely adhered to what is sometimes called Austrian economics, but I think the greatest economist ever is Ludwig von Mises. But a lot of Austrian economists go off the deep end when it comes to anarchy and a bunch of other things. But
from
a purely economics perspective, I agree with many of the, not all, but many of the Austrian arguments. Also, like, some people from the Chicago school. So but generally free market.
Right. Yeah. I'm more free market as well, but neoclassical generally rules the day today. So, Sitch, do you have any questions or anything? I think we have some questions via super chats. Yeah.
There were some super chats that were questions that I had as well. The
Okay.
Oceanist for $10 asks, why do you think capitalism is hated today and that there's this rise on the far left and far right with alternatives?
For
I
a couple of reasons. One is, I think, because it's misconceptualized. That is, that people conceptualize capitalism as the system we have today. And what they see today are the problems. They see economic crisis like the financial crisis. They see cronyism and they associate with that with capitalism. And they conceive of that as capitalism. And yeah, we're all against that. Nobody likes, I mean, except for the cronies and the president, nobody
Mhm.
actually likes cronyism. Nobody likes these financial crises, and nobody's willing to do the work to discover why they happen. Cronyism is not a feature of capitalism. It's a feature of a mixed economy. It's a feature of a lot of statism, giving the state a lot of power over the economy, then provides massive incentives for people to go lobby to try to get some of the, the goodies that are being that the statists are controlling. And the same thing with economic crisis. Almost every economic crisis that I've seen, really every economic crisis I've seen, is a consequence of government regulations and government controls and the Federal Reserve doing bad stuff. So people don't conceptualize what capitalism really is, and capitalism is, in its pure form, a separation of state from economics. It's the state has no economic role. It doesn't intervene in the economy one iota. It doesn't regulate. There's no central bank. It basically leaves us free. Capitalism is a system where individuals are free. They're left alone. They're not cursed. They're not forced. So that's one, is the misconceptualization. I'd say the second is there's a moral issue around capitalism. Capitalism is the system, fundamentally. Capitalism is a system of self-interest. It's a system of people pursuing their own interests, their own values, their own wealth, their own happiness, their own values, and that's not moral. Morality is about sacrifice. And socialism in all its different forms or fascism are all about sacrifice. That socialism demands that you sacrifice for the sake of the proletarian, and nationalism demands that you sacrifice for the sake of the state, and fascism demands that you sacrifice for the sake of the state plus your race or whatever. And people are much more comfortable with the language of sacrifice, as we talked about, than the language of self-interest. They believe sacrifice is noble and moral, and self-interest is like yucky and something's wrong with it. So they're reluctant to support an economic system that fundamentally is about self-interest, and that's what capitalism is. It's undeniable.
Mhm.
how do you deal with the economic losers in that situation though? If you have no regulation whatsoever, it's hard for me to imagine that there's not going to be vast amounts of people who are just on the outs with the economic system.
You obviously lack imagination then. No,
Oh,
I,
really? Well, look,
yeah, I
I
mean,
think right now the
what
hatred
losers?
for
Give me an example of losers under capitalism.
well, if there's somebody that's working 50 hours a week and they can't really make ends meet, they can't pay their bills. If there are people that don't think they're ever going to be able to afford to own a home, I
But
think
why?
those
But
people
why
are
is
going to
that a
be.
consequence of capitalism? It's exact opposite of statism. That's exact opposite of socialism. That's exact outcome of socialism. That is, there's no reason to believe, zero reason to believe that wages wouldn't be high under capitalism. Quite the opposite. Think about how Ford doubled the wages of his employees in order to attract the most productive employees, and by thus doing raised wages across the entire automobile sector. The only economic system in all of human history to actually raise wages is capitalism. And what happens is you get paid based on how productive you are. And as productivity increases because of mechanization and computers and all of that, wages go up.
Yeah, but
And
there are going to be people who are completely locked out of the economy because they
nobody's
don't
going to be
have
locked
any
out of it.
productive value whatsoever.
Nobody. There's nobody in this world. I mean, unless you're really, either
So there are people who are going to be
very,
locked out of
very
this
few
economy.
that would be locked out of a capitalist economy. The reality is that, unless you're, I don't know, paraplegic, you can't move anything,
So what do
or
we do with that guy, the paraplegic? Should the
well,
state take care of that
what
guy
you do with him today, you provide him charity. It's just the difference is that you don't provide the charity by forcing
through
people.
the state? Okay, I got you.
Yeah, you don't do it through the state. You do it through voluntary. Yeah, I always ask my audience, how many of you are willing to help the guy who just had an accident and lost his legs and can't work and everything, and every hand in the room goes up. So what do we need government for? All of you are willing to help him, so go help him. So it's not hard to imagine a world in which that fraction of a percent who really can't work gets helped by everybody else, because we do it now through taxes in a very, very inefficient way, by the way, and a very unproductive way. But
Let's
the
say
reality
let's say
is,
hypothetically though that AI takes 30% of the workforce and makes them superfluous. They
but
cannot help
but that
any
was
way,
that
shape, or
was
form.
that was said about the steam engine. It was said about every single
Yeah, but look,
technology that's ever been invented.
this is a hypothetical where this
Well, but I
does
don't
happen.
buy hypotheticals that are detached from reality. I deal with reality, facts. The
Okay.
reality is that technology always creates more jobs than it destroys. That's been a pattern throughout all of human history. And look, not all jobs are equally remunerating. That's why inequality exists and why it's a good thing, because different people perform at different levels of productivity. But there are always new needs. There are always new jobs. There are always new things for people to do. I mean,
I think patterns can break though. Obviously, there was a time when people were hunter and gatherers and then the pattern broke and they
but the
decided to
pattern
start
always
farming.
advances. As long as we're free, the pattern always advances in the same direction. Freedom leads to more economic growth and more technology and more success and more jobs. We now have 8 billion people on the planet. 50 years ago, we didn't believe we could feed 8 billion people. 200 years ago, we couldn't even imagine 8 billion people, and there were only half a billion people on planet Earth, so there were only half a billion jobs. Now there are 8 billion jobs. So no, I mean, there's no limit to human imagination. There's no limit to human creativity, and there's no limit to how much we desire or want. So, there's so many jobs today that didn't exist 30
Well,
years.
I know the argument. If an outcome, there's only a slim chance of an outcome happening, but there is a chance of an outcome happening. Isn't it prudent to prepare for that outcome?
No, because again, if the outcome goes against all of economic theory and all of historical experience, then it's just fear mongering to prepare for that outcome.
Didn't farming, by the hunter gatherer example, wasn't that something that went against all the hunter gatherer experience?
Yeah,
I mean, the model broke
and
because they
farming
had no
and
experience to
farming
deal with it.
created many, many more jobs than hunter
Well,
gatherers.
I only use it in a
But nobody
paradigm
lost
can
their job.
vastly change.
They all
I'm not
replaced
using
their
it to
jobs.
say the
They
jobs
replaced their jobs.
stopped.
So AI is coming. Your job will be replaced. You will
Hmm.
have to do something different.
Right.
You will have to retrain. That is a fact. You can ignore it as much as you want, and figure out what you can do that will not be replaced by AI.
And if that doesn't happen,
If that doesn't happen, then you're dependent on. If you really are never going to find a job, right? If that really
okay,
happens,
okay,
then you're dependent on other people.
you're
And if
dependent on charity.
you're dependent on other people. Now the question is, do we want to use a gun and coercion and force to force people to help that person, or do we want to rely on voluntary help? And I think that there's nothing more evil than force and coercion, and therefore I don't want to rely on force and coercion. If they're going to be those people, they're going to have to come and ask me for help, assuming I'm in a position to help them, and I might
Well,
help them, and I might not. I'm not.
ultimately, I agree with you that there could be other jobs that come around. I don't know that the pattern is going to be broken. I don't have a 100% understanding of the entire situation. Obviously, the economy is too complex to really know. So, but I do think there could be some sort of disruption, and we probably should be planning for that just in
I
case.
think that I don't think I think there's going to be disruption. Look, we live in a mixed economy. We don't live under capitalism. It's quite likely that people will lose their jobs and not find other jobs, and they won't look for other jobs and they won't get retrained because we've conditioned them to accept welfare and to accept the state as a last minute provider. So one of the things you do in a mixed economy in a welfare state is you create disincentives to adapt and to adjust. So if the reason the hunter gatherers all adapted to farming is they had no choice, right? There was no welfare state to
Yeah,
bail them out.
that's
So there
true.
was no welfare state to bail them out. So I'm saying the more we provide bailouts, the more we get bad behavior. Bailouts lead to bad behavior in businesses, and they lead bad behavior in individuals. Look. There's still a lot of people sitting literally on their couch watching TV, probably not watching this show, but watching TV in Cleveland and Cincinnati, waiting for their steel jobs to come back. They're never coming back, but they're still sitting there. Now, there are lots of jobs in, I don't know, Northwest Arkansas. There's a ton of jobs in Northwest Arkansas and in Texas and in lots of other places. But they're not going to get off of that sofa. They're not going to get in their car. They're not going to drive to Northwest Arkansas and get that job because they're waiting for that welfare check and because politicians and commentators and economists have promised them to just wait, the jobs are coming back. And that's a lie, and it's destructive to their own lives. And indeed, if you look at mobility in the United States, that is people willingness to move from city to city, it's plummeted over the last 50 years. That is, the more we pay people welfare, the more they stay put. And the less ambitious they are, and the less they go find the jobs, and the less they create the jobs. So I'm not saying you're not going to have a massive disruption because of AI in a mixed economy. A mixed economy is awful. And yes, we're going to get massive disruption. I'm saying that if we had capitalism, it would be very different. It would be more like the transition from agriculture to manufacturing. And we don't remember big disruptions in that transition. And you remember that 200 years ago, 98% of all the population was doing agriculture, and today it's less than 1%.
Kirk
And
Wilcox.
pretty smoothly.
Kirk Wilcox for $2 says Yarn Brook is the best. You got a fan, Yarn.
Hey, yeah, I know, Cook. So,
Nice.
Do we have more questions?
Yeah. Fondue asks, how does Brooks feel about Jordan Peterson's argument on lobsters when it comes to status?
Yeah, I mean, lobsters care about status. Good for lobsters. Lobsters are not rational. Lobsters have no free will.
Right.
Lobsters have a really, really, really tiny brain. It's one of the reasons we are so eager to eat them, because we know they're not really, they don't know what's happening. To compare human beings to lobsters is bizarre and ridiculous. I mean, with all due respect to Jordan Peterson, I think it's bizarre and ridiculous. Lobsters climb over each other. In human society, we don't do that. We don't climb over each other. We trade. And the reality is that somebody else's success, somebody else's prosperity is actually really good for me, right? I love billionaires. I know it's popular to say no billionaires. I love billionaires because I know that pretty much every billionaire in American economy has made my life better. And if I met a Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or any one of these guys, I would go up, shake their hand, and say thank you.
Right. Well, I think what Pearson was talking about with the lobsters was that lobsters have neurochemical pathways that affect like how they judge themselves in the lobster hierarchy actually would give them more serotonin or less serotonin and all that stuff.
Lobsters have no self-awareness. They have no self-awareness.
Like
they don't judge themselves. They just do. They're automatic.
Humans, even though we have self-awareness and rationality, we still have those biochemical pathways.
No, we don't. We have very, very different biochemical pathways. Man, the brain of a human being and the brain of a lobster are so different, so dramatically different. I just don't buy it. I don't buy the similarity. And the reality is, here's the great evolutionary breakthrough that is made when human beings come into being. And that is, you don't have to wire everything. You don't have to pre-program. You don't have to create all the routes because you provide human beings with the capacity to reason, to think for themselves. You provide them with free will, and then they get to write the code themselves. So we come much more, I don't think we come completely tabula rasa, but we come much more tabula rasa than what people imagine. Particularly when it comes to ideas and ideas relative to other being. And look, and if we have some self-destructive coding left over from when we were lobsters, then we can override it because we have free will and we're rational and we don't have to live as an animal. Most people, sadly, a lot of people do live like animals. They don't engage in that free will and they don't engage in that rationality. And that is expressed in the fact that they're not happy human beings.
Yeah. But I would say that we have to overcome it. I think it's useful for us to understand what the programming is. I think it's more difficult if people don't realize that this programming exists within them.
I think the principle here to guide all that, rather than having to know every single path that you have to override, the principle to know here is be rational.
Mm.
And if that's the principle, then that overrides everything.
At Games asks, do you believe that an individual ought to participate, or what circumstances would an individual participate in a just war? The self-serving individual, would they be better off avoiding the war or joining the winning side, even if it's oppressive?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only time that an individual should join a just war is when it's just. And I think the only just war is a war of self-defense. And, so you're defending yourself and you're defending, what does that mean? It means defending your freedom, defending your liberty. I can't imagine it ever being in your self-interest to join the winning side if that side is oppressive, because then you then get to live under oppression. And I think that is incredibly self-destructive. So always fight for freedom, always fight for liberty, and hope that your side is the one that wins.
Is it better to live under oppression than to die, I guess would be the question.
Yeah, it is actually. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I completely understand people who commit suicide in a concentration camp, or a Solzhenitsyn who's willing to stand up to the authorities in the Soviet Union at the risk of death and go to the gulags. Living, if you have a soul, and if you have if you're self-aware and you have free will, and then you know how horrific oppression is and how damaging it into the very essence of who you are. A great book on that, by the way, is Ayn Rand's less known novel called We the Living, which is about a young woman who grows up under communism, and what communism does, what oppression does to the human psyche. Better to fight, and even in some cases die. I mean, you don't want to commit suicide, but you want to fight and try to die. You want to try to make your life better in one way or the other.
Right. Sammy G says, hearing Yarn reminds me of how my grandfather successfully did business. He always made sure everyone benefits in a deal, and that's what made him more successful was his reputation of being trustworthy.
I mean, absolutely. Look, life generally is about creating win-win relationships with other people. You want to win, but the only way you really win in the long run is if the other party wins as well. You want a win-win relationship with your wife. You want a win-win relationship, with your employees. You want a win-win relationship with your boss. You want to maximize your win, and your friends, of course. You want to maximize your win-win relationships. I think this is one of the real damages to America of Donald Trump, is that he is very much a zero-sum mentality. He believes that him winning means somebody else losing. And he relishes other people's losses. He loves to see people lose. He believes the art of the deal is all about screwing the other guy. I think that's a pathetic way to live. I think Donald Trump is a pathetic human being, put aside president, but as a human being. And I'm with his grandfather. Create relationships where you win, you benefit, but the way to win and way to benefit long term is by having other people win as well.
Mm-hmm. Harrison Jodit says, I'd like to apologize to Yaron. I criticized him a while back for harping on the young Republican chat leaks. Then Tucker Carlson interviewed Fuentes, and wow, I was wrong about the prevalence of Nazism.
Sad. I wish I was wrong. I wish I had been wrong. But it looks like it's all over the place. And if you've seen, there's another one of the young Republicans out of New York who did a little video of Jews as cockroaches. I mean, there's no end to this. Once you start digging, you find them all over the place, which is sad and horrific. Now, I think for most of them, it's just a cool thing to be right now. I don't know how deep it goes, their anti-Semitism and everything, but it is scary what's happening out there among young Republicans.
Andrew Bear says, how do you cope with a selfish person who offloads the negative repercussions onto an outside group like American companies, like the American company damaging stuff in Asia?
I mean, Americans have brought so much good to Asia. It's unbelievable, right? I mean, Asia is so much richer and so much better, and life in Asia is so much longer, healthier, and more prosperous because of American business doing business there. That I really, you can find a case here or there where some environmental damage was done. But, you know, part of progress is environmental damage. Part of the way you get rich is by destroying something in the environment that everybody values. The reality is, if you look at every single Asian countries that American corporations have done business with, those countries are richer, their people live longer, they live healthier, their wages are higher, child labor has declined. And the cause ultimately is the foreign capital, foreign expertise, and foreign business knowledge that Americans have brought to those countries. Look, if somebody exploits other people, if they really do something negative, I'm not saying all corporations are, have done good. Some people do harm. They should be punished for the harm that they do. If they really do, through negligence or through purposeful exploitation, do something horrible to people, then they should suffer. They should be sued. They should be shut down. But the reality on the ground is being mythologized. That is, you have been taught and told stories about evil corporations your entire life. 99.9% of those stories are false.
RBJ's fam says, I agree in the free market system, but are they possible in a labor value regulated world where governments manipulate their currencies via printing and interest rates?
Yeah, don't do that. Stop doing it. Privatize money, privatize banks, privatize money, get rid of the Federal Reserve, get rid of all of it. So a free market means free. It means
Privatize the money.
Yeah, I mean, before 1914, who issued money in America?
I don't know.
States.
Banks. So you took your little bag of gold and you gave it to the bank, and they gave you a bank note. And every bank had its own bank notes. They were all dollars, but they had the name of the bank on it, and they issued currency. The money was the gold. It sat in their vault, and you could exchange that bank note at any other bank for gold, and then the banks would settle among each other. But money was
But the banks themselves could print more notes without people showing up with their gold. They figured out
That's right.
that
That's called
look,
fractional reserve. That's
we can
called
just
fractional
make
reserve
some
banking.
notes. We
That's
don't have
called
to have
fractional
gold in
reserve
the
banking. And if you do too much of it, if you do it irresponsibly, you go bankrupt. But the
well.
reality,
Also, you take down all of your bank
yeah,
customers
but
as well.
look,
So
the freest banking systems in history were not in the United States. The United States had a pretty regulated banking system from the founding. The freest banking systems are banking systems like in Scotland in the 19th century, in Canada, of all places. And both the Canadian and you know how many banking crises Canada has had over the last 200 years? The United States has had something like 14. Do you know how many banking crises Canada has had?
no, I'm gonna
Zero.
guess zero. Yeah.
Zero. Because they didn't regulate banks. They left them alone. They let the market work until they instituted a central bank pretty late. I think it was in the 1930s or 40s, pretty late. And they had the same system. Banks printed money. Banks printed money. Banks printed money in Scotland. Banks printed money historically. Private issuers printed money. That's not a problem. And if somebody commits fraud, we all hate fraud. Fraud, we know what to do with. You send the people to jail. But the only thing that creates systemic risk, the kind of risk that sees hundreds of institutions go under and really, really bad economic outcomes, that is only created by regulation, only created by centralized power and centralized control. That's what's called systemic risk. Systemic risk is the thing that has systemic risk is government. An individual bank has no systemic risk. The Federal Reserve was created in the first place. Somebody asks, the Federal Reserve was created in the first place in order to in order to increase the power of government. It was a way of politicians realized that if they really wanted to control you, they wanted to control the economy, they wanted to be able to manipulate the economy and use the money for their social programs and all that, they needed to take power away from bankers and give it to central bankers who they appointed, who are under their thumb. And, that's why a central bank was created, and it's worked, right? Because we had a central bank, we got to create before central bank, there was no welfare state. There was very little regulation of business. There was almost no redistribution of wealth. But since we have a central bank, now politicians can do all those things. And that is a pattern that every country in the world has followed.
The Rooster asked, now that the Gaza war has settled, what do you think were some mistakes that were made? Do you think Netanyahu prolonged the war cynically to remain in power to avoid corruption charges and appease the radicals in his party?
God, do you really want me to get into this?
You don't have to. I mean,
I know I'm happy to. I said there was nothing off the table. The biggest mistake
we
of the
weren't talking
war,
about Israel at all, so you don't have to answer.
the
I don't know.
biggest
I don't know how
mistake
much
of the
time you
war.
have, so
What's that?
I don't know how much time you have, so you
No,
just
I've got
skip on it if you
another.
want.
We can go for another half an hour. The
Okay.
biggest mistake of the war was not ending it after 3 months.
Hmm.
That is, the biggest mistake of the war was not going all out, all in, and really destroying Hamas completely in 3 months. The biggest mistake of the war was caring about. I mean, not caring. Caring is the wrong word. It's elevating the importance of the lives of the hostages above the real goal of the war, which should have been destruction of Hamas. So the war should have lasted 3 months, maybe six, if you were really careful. And Hamas should have been completely and utterly and thoroughly destroyed. And that's it. It would have been over, and Israel would have. The world would have just accepted it because it happened right after October 7th. I said in October 8th, I said, the longer Israel takes to do this, the more the world will turn against it. It needs to do it fast. It needs to do it ruthlessly. It needs to do it quickly. It needs to get it over with. And the only goal should be the destruction of Hamas.
And what would be how would that be accomplished? Just like logistically.
It would be, I mean, what they should have done is they should have said, all civilians go. Here's a section along the beach that we're not going to bomb right now. You go to the beach, pitch a tent. We don't care. Do whatever you need to do. Here's a few areas where we're not going to touch. All of you go there.
Mhm.
And then they should have launched into a bombing campaign that should have turned it into ashes, brought in and come in then with the ground troops, hunted down every Hamas operative that exists, blown up every tunnel that exists. There's still tunnels in Gaza that the Hamas is still using. They still have tons of weapons that they're using. That should have all been destroyed. And again, it's all doable within 3 months or to 6 months. And Israel would have suffered fewer casualties, fewer Israeli soldiers would have died, and maybe even fewer Palestinian civilians would have died if they would have done it thoroughly, systematically, quickly, and again, super brutally in the sense of using maximum force.
Mhm.
No, Israel didn't try that. Israel went in tentatively, slowly. It didn't cut off the Philadelphia. I mean, the strategic errors militarily are unbelievable to me, right? That Netanyahu and his government and the military engaged in. They didn't cut off the Egyptian border until about almost a year into it, or 9 months into it. That should have been the first target. Should have been to cut off the supplies from Egypt and take Rafah and take the border there. So I know my Gaza, and I know the Israeli military, and this was not a well-run campaign. Other than the Israeli military is really, really, really good, and when they actually, figure out what they want to do, they can do it. The strategy from day one was really, really, really bad, and I blame Netanyahu and his generals for that. And look, I've been no fan of Netanyahu for 20 something years. I never liked the guy. I think he's a power lusting. If I think anybody with an ounce of morality would have resigned on October 8th after October 7th. I place much of the blame for what happened on October 7th on Netanyahu. He appeased Hamas for 15 years, allowed them to get to the position where they could pull off October 7th. Yeah, whether he prolonged it for political reasons, and I think he prolonged it for lots of reasons, to appease the Americans, to appease the families of the hostages and a lot of the Israeli public who really, who the hostages were the key to. There were lots of political and non-political reasons for him to drag out the war, but it's a massive mistake.
What is your opinion of the term Zionist?
I think that um, I think that Zionism means the Jews are a nation, and therefore they should have a geographic area which they can call their state, their home. I think that given anti-Semitism, given its prevalence, given the fact that it does not seem to go away, and it rises up everywhere. I think Jews need somewhere to be able to escape to. I don't consider myself a Jew in any meaningful sense. I don't practice anything Jewish, right? I don't celebrate the holidays. My kids were not raised Jewish. There's nothing Jewish about me. I'm an atheist, and I don't like religion. I despise religion, and I despise all religions. But the reality is that many people on the chat view me as a Jew. Maybe not on your chat, but on my chat, view me as a Jew and hate me for being a Jew. And if they ever come to power in America, it's good that I have some way to escape to, right? As all Jews do to Israel. So Israel is a great escape place. It's an escape plan for Jews, and they need one because of the history of anti-Semitism.
I agree with that. I would call myself a Zionist. I just know a lot of people are using the term derogatorily towards people. So that's why I was curious.
Well, because they view Zionism as colonialism, because they don't
What's
understand.
wrong with colonialism?
Well, I mean, nothing in a certain context and a lot in other contexts. Some colonies were good, some colonies were bad. One has
Look,
to.
America was a colony.
Yeah, America is a good example of
Turned
colonies.
out pretty good over here. So
I agree. I agree. Well, not for the Indians, but it turned out good, and it's a good place. And some colonies are bad. There were colonies where people did horrific things, and where it didn't turn out so good. Luckily, in America, it was founded on good ideas. And at the end of the day, what shapes the world are ideas. And if we have not serotonin, but ideas, and when you have good ideas, good outcomes happen.
yeah, the Native Americans weren't doing anything with it, and I heard that selfishness was a moral virtue. So
I think that to a large extent, that is true.
what? Are there any more,
I mean,
Sitch?
it doesn't justify wiping them out. And to a large extent, they died because of disease, not because they were physically wiped out. It doesn't justify wiping them out. There were lots of things that could have been done with the Indians that would have not changed the nature of America without some of the aggressive tactics that were used. So you could have respected their rights and built in America. Um, but the reality is that that's not what happens, sadly. And we're still, by the way, we still treat Indians in America horrifically and horribly, and in an un-American way. And we still haven't learned. And the left doesn't. The left who argues for Indian rights has no solutions to how to deal with Indians, because they have no concept of what America is really about, which is individual rights and property rights and individualism. We treat them as tribes, but if we treated them as individuals from the beginning, our whole relationship with them would have been different. But sadly, that wasn't the case.
Evolution is a savage reality, but it did bring us into existence. So I don't believe
I don't
in
consider
feeling
evolution as
guilty.
savage, right?
Well, it really is
Evolution
dog
is
eat
what it
dog,
is.
though.
Nature is what it is. A savage is a term that only applies to human beings. Human beings can be savage, and again, rationality is the solution to that. You have to be rational to
Right.
over. That's
Rationality
not.
is a product of evolution, though, right? You accept that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, where
Yeah.
it's a product of it's not a product in a sense that somebody designed it. Evolution didn't design it.
Right. No, I totally
It,
agree
it,
with you.
it
Yeah.
comes out of the particular biology that we have. We have free will, we have reason, we have rationality. That is
Came
a
out of
characteristic.
incentive structures, I think is
Well, and the particular nature of our consciousness, which we don't completely understand. We have a and it's the other thing about the whole serotonin lobster thing. We have very, very limited understanding of consciousness, of any consciousness, including animal consciousness. And then we have almost no understanding of human consciousness. We really don't understand how human consciousness functions, how it came into being, what its characteristic. We understand at a philosophical level. We have very little understanding at the biological level. So I think generally people should be a little bit more skeptical about making assertions about what we're born with or not born with. The science there is very, very young.
how do you define identity politics? A lot of people talk about identity politics.
It's politics that center around your group, somebody's a definition of a group, the group you belong to, or the group that you come from. I don't know what the hell that means. So they can define it by skin color, they can define it by ethnic origins, they can define it by race. But it's completely rational. It's completely collectivistic, and completely, it's a bogus ideology. You are who you are as an individual and who you make yourself into through the use of your free will and your reason. So people should be treated as individuals. I agree with Martin Luther King. Treat people based on their character, not based on what they look like.
So you would be against identity politics?
Very much so.
Okay.
Both on the left and on the right.
Sitch, any more questions?
Do you think that there's a natural inclination, sort of like a Pareto principle, towards people that have more resources will just naturally get more, and that will spiral out of control and require some sort of external hand to fix that or change that?
No, and again, history shows that is history under freedom shows that is bogus. There used to be a term in the 19th century, which is the most capitalist century we've had, particularly post Civil War, from short sleeve to short sleeve in three generations. That is, having money doesn't mean you'll continue to have money. People lost money all the time. People went from poverty to riches to poverty to riches to poverty. Particularly children of rich people lost the money pretty quickly and pretty easily. So no, I don't think that's the case. And again, because the only way to make money, really to make money in a free society, is by making other people better off. That is by trading with other people, and therefore increasing their well-being. Even if you become richer and richer, so do they. They're also becoming richer and richer. You cannot become a billionaire without making the world a better place. I mean, in a free market, because you're selling products to people who want your products and who are going to benefit from those products. So their life is better off, and your life is better off. You got a few more dollars. So it's not a zero-sum world. It's an ever-growing world based on win-win transactions. That's what makes capitalism run.
Okay. Is objectivism paradoxical in that it's sort of promoting individualism is actually what's best for the collective?
Well, it never objectivism never really talks about in terms of the collective. It does say that what's good for individuals, that the collective is just a group of individuals. So by pursuing the interest of the individual, that is leaving him free, the group of individuals is better off. So the best thing for a group of individuals is for individuals to have individual rights, to be free and to be able to pursue their own values.
But I think the question, well, that's the way that I perceive the
So there's
question
no paradox.
is the fact that it seems interesting that it has to be sort of, I guess it doesn't have to be, but it's often framed as like you have to frame it like it's beneficial to the group. Like it's like we're so stuck in that framing that's what we have to do to accept it.
That's right. I mean, even Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations says, look, capitalism runs by self-interest. The baker doesn't care about you. He's baking the bread and selling you the bread because he's trying to make a living and he's trying to make his life better.
Mm-hmm.
But if you add up all the self-interested actions of everybody, society is better off. But objectivism never makes that claim. That is, we don't make the claim that society is better off or the collective is better off. It is if you identify society and the collective right. But the key for us is the individual. The fact that it works for the group as well is gravy. But that's not the way we conceptualize it. It's not the way we think about it.
Would you still be in favor of it if it did produce a society that was a terrible society to live in? That
it's a hard question, given that it's not the case. I am for freedom as a primary, but one of the reasons I'm for freedom is because I believe that it'll produce a better life for me, and I'm not going to live a good life if everybody around me is suffering or struggling or wants to steal my stuff. So I think it's all integrated and it's all one.
Isn't that most societies, though? Most societies have some sort of wealthy elite, and they are surrounded by people who are poor and just want to steal their stuff.
Most societies are not capitalist. Most societies are not free. So I'm talking about freedom. Why I advocate for freedom is because I think that is the best society for me to live in for all these various reasons.
Well, I'm using that to say that obviously we enjoy a quality of life that other people don't, and that is nice. But most places in the world, people
Yeah. So they
seem to
need to become
be
capitalist.
well. They seem to
They
be
need to,
comfortable,
but
especially the elites. They seem to be comfortable living in a situation where everyone else is in squalor.
I
They
mean,
don't look at that as a
I don't know if they're
downfall.
comfortable. I mean, it's interesting that many of them immigrate away from those countries, and their children certainly immigrate away from those countries. So I don't know if they're comfortable, but the reality is that those countries need to become freer and more capitalist. Otherwise, they'll go down the path of an Argentina or down the path of Venezuela, where nobody's comfortable and everybody's worse off. So the solution to those kind of countries is more freedom. That is capitalism.
Right. No, I agree. A growing question is how much effort should we exert on making them more free?
In terms of foreign policy,
Yeah, totally.
it would be nice if we could lead by example. So let's focus first on being free, and then we can lead by example.
Yeah. Here, here.
I'd rather do that than I don't believe in forcing people to be free. I believe people need to choose that.
Isn't it a great paradox though? We're going to force you to be free.
It's of course a
That
paradox. That's why it
that's
doesn't
a
work.
good
That's why
paradox.
we
Yeah.
couldn't bring democracy to the Middle East, right? That's why Iraq was a massive failure.
I,
It's
do
'cause
you
we tried to
like
force.
do you like Francis Fukuyama? Do you read Francis Fukuyama?
I do. I mean, he's always interesting, but almost always wrong.
He splits nation building up and statecraft. So
I
we
know.
had the delusion of thinking that we could move our institutions over to the Middle East, even though the people had none
Yeah,
of the
but we
culture.
didn't. But we didn't. So here's. I mean, I don't know. Fukuyama should know this, but I mean, he's wrong. He's almost always wrong. Think about nation building statecraft in Japan after World War II. We basically, I mean, General MacArthur basically wrote a constitution over a weekend with his aide, went to the palace and told the emperor to sign it. And the
Yeah.
emperor signed it. And to this day, Japan has a constitution written not by Japanese, written by General MacArthur. In Iraq, when we wanted them to have a constitution, we got all the tribal leaders together and we said, write your constitution. So they wrote a shitty constitution. They wrote a collectivistic, tribalistic a constitution that basically institutionalizes their tribalism, barbarism, and primitivism. And as a consequence, they will never become better. Japan became a rich, relatively capitalist place, and Iraq is a hellhole and will stay so.
Aren't you making my argument for colonialism? Aren't you really doing a good job of that? It seems like
I'm
you are.
saying that if you're going to do it, if you're going to go and impose it, then impose it.
Yeah,
Don't do
I
half-ass jobs.
agree.
But
I agree.
I wouldn't go, right? I don't think we should have gone to Iraq. There was no reason to go to Iraq. The real threat was from Iran, and in Iran, it would have
Iraq
been
was a
Syria.
terrible idea. I don't want you to think I think Iraq was a good idea. So
And even if we'd written the constitution for the Iraqis, we would have had to stay there for decades to actually force them to actually apply it because the culture just wasn't ready for it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
And
only reason I bring up Fukuyama is because I
and,
do
and
think that split between the statecraft and the culture is super important.
yeah, but it's one of the reasons you could impose a constitution in the Japanese is you just destroyed them, right?
Right.
Don't know that if without Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you could write their constitution for them and have them just accept it.
Well, maybe they were
And
more comfortable with a
we didn't do that in
hierarchical.
Iraq. We dealt with them very gently, and the consequence of being gentle is they don't give up on their own ideas.
I don't know much about Japan, but they do seem to value a hierarchical culture more than we do in the West. So that could have
That
been
is
part of it too.
broken
Culturally, they
down
could have met us halfway already.
a lot less in the last, since World War II than before World War II.
Oh, really? They're more
Yeah, they're
individuals
becoming
now.
more Western. They're becoming more individualistic, more entrepreneurial, less hierarchical, more politically equal. So it's a very changed world as compared to pre World War II Japan.
Do you like Japanese anime? Did you see
I mean, a little
Chainsaw
bit.
Man?
I haven't seen a lot of anime. Some of my supporters have encouraged me to watch a few movies, and they were into
Chainsaw Man. You got to see it,
Really?
Yarn. Come
yeah,
on.
Wait, what have
Chainsaw
you
Man.
seen?
Right. So I'm obviously not a big anime fan. If I'm a huge fan of Japanese cinema,
Hmm.
Akira Kurosawa, Seven
Oh,
Samurai,
yes.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
and Ran and Kagemusha and movies like that. So I'm a huge fan of Japanese cinema. I never really got into anime. No, maybe that's one area where I'm a little too old for it.
Chainsaw Man is a good movie, so
I
you'd probably
I,
Okay.
like it.
I believe you.
Don't worry about it.
All
Well, thanks for
right.
coming on, Yarn Brooks. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Those of you who are listening, if you want to follow me, I have a show called Your Run Book Show. Just put it into YouTube; it's easy to find. Where I pretty much do a daily show analyzing the news and analyzing what's going on in the world from my perspective and my understanding of Ayn Rand's perspective.
Yeah, and I'll put links to your show in the description as well, so
Wonderful.
people can
Yeah,
find them there. Yeah.
this is fun, guys. I really enjoyed it. Thank
Well,
you for
you're
having me.
welcome to come back anytime. So,
Great.
yeah, this is a great
We'll have to do
conversation.
this again. Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Take care.
Take
Have
care.
a great rest of your week. Bye.
You too.
Okay.
So, do we have any more super
Yeah,
chats
we have
that are not?
some more
Okay.
that weren't like questions and stuff. JMac, thanks so much. So your father, JMac, for the $100.
Nice.
Says Trump likes people that like him. That's really it. He wants fealty. Just look at any former fan of his, Musk, MTG, Massey. They gave any amount of pushback. It's why he can love people who are far ends of the right wing coalition despite their polarizing beliefs.
Yeah, that's Trump watched that interview with Nick Fuentes and he was like, "This guy loves me."
Well, it's weird because yeah, like, and that was part of I think the whitewashing, to use the term, that Tucker did was because if you watch what Fuentes actually says, he's very anti-Trump, especially at the moment. I mean, he's pushing the whole. Sure, you've seen the clip. Everyone's seen the clip of him pushing the whole MAGA's dead movement and trying to get everyone to throw away their little red hats.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure
So,
Trump doesn't like that, but
yeah,
has Trump seen that? Who knows?
probably not. Well, actually, I forget who it was. There was someone who brought up. Maybe it might have been on Breaking Points. There's some brought up this kind of interesting point that Trump gains a lot of political cover by kind of being a boomer or appearing as a boomer who can be like, well, he doesn't know about X. So people dismiss his like him not talking about it or not really addressing some specific issue.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
Yeah,
He plays dumb.
right. Ace for $10 says nothing has blackpilled me on politics than seeing losers like Jon Stewart attack Sydney Sweeney and claim she has a MAGA fan base, and that is why her latest film didn't do well.
I totally agree. Look, I'm agreeing with Ace here.
Wow, Jon Stewart attacked Sydney Sweeney on that. That's pretty
Why?
terrible. I gotta check that out. Yeah, well, of all the things to talk about, it's so weird because Jon Stewart's so strange, and I mean, we would cover some of his podcast. He really seemed like a person who, from the beginning, like at first seemed like pretty center left, and then it just became more and more like consumed
Crazy?
by like hating the right, and then also consumed by identity politics. Because I remember we'd watch some of his podcast, and it was like he'd be like the one guy in the room, and he's surrounded by all these women who work for him. And they all
Yeah.
just like laugh at everything he would say. And it was just like, it really felt like he was just kind of playing up to like the stereotype of not wanting to get left behind by the new generations.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the picture of him surrounded by his female producers because
Yeah.
this is why Jon Stewart is bitching about Sweeney because all three of these girls are in his ear every day. Oh, that catty bitch.
Right.
That slutty bitch.
Well, I would say that Jon Stewart is falling prey to not being rational and falling prey to the desire for climbing status to attract women.
100%. Yes, definitely. He's being a
It's hard
good
to,
ally to his female
yeah,
producers
exactly.
there.
Renault Zoro's here for $10 says status is external locus of control. Self-esteem is internal. Someone typically jumps on a grenade out of the love of their combat brothers. Yeah, I think that's true too. I think people can think of dying for their countrymen for like an honor sake and to gain status, kind of the way that you're saying, Adam. And then also it's just you could have a like a love of your fellow brothers in arms that kind of motivates that behavior as well.
Two motivations are better than one, that's for sure.
Yes.
I totally agree.
The Oceanist, thank you so much for $10. Says, hey guys, thanks for making the stream happen. Well, thank you. Blue 566 for $10 says, really appreciate Yarn coming on the show. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Albert,
yeah, it was great.
yeah, it was an interesting conversation. I feel like there's a lot more to talk about because I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
elements that I think that me and Adam fundamentally disagree with Yarn on. That'd be interesting to keep kind of going into.
Yeah, if he'll come back, we can have a more debate posture. I looked up because Andrew Jackson dissolved the second central bank of the United States, and it ended up in the greatest depression in American history because all of those banks he was talking about printed as much fucking money as they possibly could because there was no restraint whatsoever. So
Right.
that completely destroyed the economy. It made acreage go from 4 million an acre to 20 million an acre. So prices skyrocketed, not unlike what happened during the housing crash, right? When anyone could get a loan, things went nuts.
Albert for 34 months says it shouldn't be the primary focus, but it's always beyond foolish to ignore how powerful of a motivator it is.
That would be status. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. It is.
Well, I guess
the way he conceptualizes it, though, is interesting.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. I wonder if, because I do think that people are biologically wired to climb hierarchies. And I think that's primarily status hierarchies.
I agree. Yeah.
Because as I said, I think status is sort of the word we use on how other people perceive your position in the hierarchy. And that as an animal that doesn't live off in the woods alone, that has to cooperate with other humans, that we had to have evolved to have this mechanism in our brains. Now, obviously, we can, and in a lot of cases that we should try to be rational actors. I agree with that, and not let ourselves be consumed by these sort of baser instincts. And while I'd say on one hand, I do think in order to not get consumed by them, you have to understand them. It's possible, and this would be kind of interesting, is it a better cultural meme or a better behavioral meme if it's like if it's kind of like the Jordan Peterson, the objective truth through the metaphorical truth. Maybe the metaphorical truth is more useful at prompting specific behavior in people to just be like, it doesn't really, don't even think about whether you're like a slave to these sort of biological impulses. You just kind of drill into people an idea of like individualism, self-improvement. Like, is that the better way? Well, that actually
it is. I think
better
it's a better
outcomes.
way. Obviously, all of religion is aimed at that. Status and wealth tend to go hand in hand, but when we were talking about the status and wealth, I was thinking, well, a lot of people would rather have status than wealth. Like if they could only have one, they wouldn't want to be extremely rich and totally hated by everyone.
Which is interesting. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Well, I think a lot of people would choose wealth, but then would be unhappy. And if they chose status, they would be happier.
Right.
So
maybe there are a lot of people that don't have wealth, but the idea of like being low status and no wealth, that's just fucking death sentence.
That's yes. No, but what I meant with sort of the culture meme is like, because most religions, there is a good and a bad, right? They'll say like, you are born sinful, you are born with these bad things, and then you must do good things. And I'm wondering if it's sort of, because it felt like that Yarn's conceptualization of this was, it's better to just focus on the good thing, like the positive, like don't even focus on the negative. And I'm curious if that's actually like a better, even if it's not like, regardless of whether it's objectively true or not, will that create a better outcome?
I see what you're saying. Well, I think we do that in that we really hide the fact that we are seeking status. We give other rationalizations for why we're doing what we're doing. Even, look, I think a lot of people would be would rebel at the way I conceptualize the jumping on the grenade. It's much easier to conceptualize it as I'm doing it for the people that I love than that I'm doing it to gain higher status, right? That takes all of the beauty out of it, all of the spiritualness out of it, right?
Mhm.
This is just an exchange. I'm giving my life for status. That's what's going on here. But I think ultimately that is what's going on.
Well, it's both. I mean, it's not a coincidence that, what in the ways that people would motivate armies to fight is like, especially, you think back in the old days was stereotype, you will live on as heroes and songs and stories and blah 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 blah.
The
Like
word
that's all an appeal
aristocracy
to
literally
status.
comes out of this. Aristocracy was originally a warrior who fought and put his life on the line for the nation or the tribe. That's where
And was
aristocracy comes from.
sure and was very successful at it.
Yeah. So
Ace
you
for
you weren't a member of the aristocracy unless you risked your life for the society.
what first, but that's sort of always the issue. I think that's where I disagree with Yarn is that like that's how it starts, but then once you've amassed that power, like you no longer necessarily have to engage in that behavior, and then you can start engaging, I think, in extractive behaviors, which will, at the detriment of most of the people around you. And I think that humans can coast on those destructive behaviors for very long times without getting some sort of penalty or drawback from it.
Yeah, a lot of people think that's when the downfall came, when you could
Yeah,
gain aristocratic type status without sacrificing for the nation. Just,
right.
just get a bunch of money, right?
Ace for $5 says between the Sweeney hate and Hank Green bending the knee to the knitting community, the modern internet sucks and reminds me of why I avoid mainstream culture. I really got to look into. I keep forgetting. I really got to look into that Hank Green knitting thing. I'm curious about all that drama.
The
Uh,
knitters went after him.
they did, yes. Big Daddy Squeezy for $5 want us to ask Yaron, would he rather fight one horse-sized horse or 100 duck-sized ducks?
Okay,
Maybe
I'm,
next time.
I'm glad you avoided that question. Although
Yeah,
I did slip in the anime one,
you
which
did. You
I
did.
thought was fun.
We'll ask next time. We'll ask next time.
We didn't ask him the POV question, but next
We've not
time,
asked anyone the POV question in a long time for probably for good reason.
yeah, it's not
Uh,
really a good question to ask.
no, the POV question is a brilliant question. It's it's too it's too brilliant. Okay.
Mhm.
It's too edgy and brilliant for I think for people to appreciate how genius the POV question is. Because it's one of those
Mhm.
things that no one's ever thought of, but it's actually really important to understanding human perception. Okay.
There,
I stand by the POV question.
you did a couple okays that you could tell you were just like not really agreeing at all. It's pretty funny. Someone in the chat said PSA Sitch 2025. Like your quote.
Hmm. Yeah. It's, well, whatever. We have things to get to, right?
We have to move on. Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously. We can't fight back on everything. So,
Matt Geddes for 17 months says there is a positive and negative version of self-interest, like positive and negative forms of narcissism, a parasitic idea of self-interest. Yeah, that's what I agree with you completely. And that's why and I guess really have to sort of hone in on how this concept of self-interest is being conceptualized. Because I don't think it seems like there's sort of this like we're defining self-interest in just a merely or a purely positive way. And the argument is like, well, things that you do that you think might be in your self-interest, but are like lying or cheating or stealing, those will somehow come back to harm you. Now, obviously, I don't, he doesn't believe in karma, but in some sort of karmic fashion, come back to harm you. And it's interesting because I don't think most people define the concept of self-interest as necessarily like dependent on some sort of outcome down the road. It's just like, are you doing something that's helping you at that moment, right? Like sort of like I don't know how to conceptualize this. Like if you're going to define self-interest as only like a long-term self-interest, I think you have to sort of separate that because I think most people act in a self-interest way that is sort of corrupted by short-term self-interest, if that makes sense.
yeah, it totally makes sense. And I think as a society, we tend to denigrate people who are too selfish because we want to discourage that kind of behavior. We want to encourage the selfless behavior for all kinds of different reasons.
Right. But like if everyone is acting, or if we're acting as like a purely rational, logical agent, it's I think people can look further and be like, okay, I need to be like long-term self-interested. It just seems like in my experience that most people don't do that. They're sort of acting upon their biological whims or their emotions. And they're sort of acting towards short-term self-interest. And that's sort of why it's like you're trying to like that's what I think society is trying to push people away from doing when they use the term selfishness or self-interest.
Yeah. It's
Three,
easy when everything's win-win though, but there are so many situations obviously where it's good for me and bad for you or bad for society. So those are the more difficult questions, right?
well, yeah, and that's what I'd be curious to sort of try to get to the bottom of in a second conversation. Is that how does objectivism
Deal with
classify an
that. Yeah.
action like that? Is such an because I wonder is there even an action like that? Is it a definitional thing? Or is the term defined in such a way that that is not actually possible
Right.
definitionally? So I don't know.
Oh, I get you. They've defined away all situations that are good for me and bad for society.
Or not would not be classified as self-interest. They'd be classified as something else.
Oh, okay.
So three Megan three for $5 says shout out to my dad who will watch this just for Yaren. Well, there you go. Hey, three
Yeah.
Megan's
We
dad.
try to keep it clean. So
Mostly. You did say shit show.
yeah, he said shit show too,
There you
which
go.
is great. What else? What's a better word for it? It just seems like a complete the things I'm seeing now. Uh, I don't want to defend Republicans anymore. It's too precarious now.
Interesting. Wow, yeah, that's the turn on that
Well,
was very
we're in a
quick.
look. We are in a sort of preference falsification realm right
Hmm.
now, where no one wants to admit they're a Nazi when they think there's 10 Nazis, right? But as
Right.
soon as you think there's a million Nazis and you have any sort of inclination towards Nazism or hating Jewish people, then now you're like, I gained status from admitting I'm a Nazi. I'm
Mm,
all in.
right.
That's a scary place to be right now because we don't know where that process ends. Does that process end with 50% of the Republican Party happy to tell everyone they're Nazis? Where does
Hmm.
that end? I mean, we 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 realize that problem on the left with communism, right? That's the problem that we're worried about. We're worried about the normies saying, "Oh yeah, I am a socialist. I am a communist," right?
Hmm.
It's the same problem.
Definitely. Um, Mitch for two Aussie bucks says thoughts on the anime Basilisk. I I've never even heard of that, so I don't have any thoughts on it.
I didn't see it.
Odd Job for $20. Thank you, Odd Job. Says a Ross Perot type that can capture the center would dominate in the next election room where ripe for the birth of a third party.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
In this situation, this is where third parties are built.
Well, it's interesting and too, and I think I think that Yarn and other people that are on more of the I don't know because he's certainly identifies as libertarian. I think the like free market capitalist side, I think that's like an uphill battle for people for a politician to win on that. I don't think that's people are very not on board with free market capitalism at the moment. So
Yeah. It was interesting that he hated Botcha so much.
that makes
But
perfect sense to me. I don't know why he thought that's interesting.
oh, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Wasn't
Yeah,
she like a
'cause
socialist or is she a
she's all
socialist or
yeah, she
something?
is a socialist. What am
Yeah,
I thinking?
right.
But also just raising up the middle class populist. Yeah, you're right. Obviously, he would hate Botcha, but I'm glad I
Yeah,
brought it up because so we got some good
right.
feedback on that. She says if there was a party that focused on immigration and healthcare, because obviously that those two issues. One party has each of those issues. But if there was a party that was said, we're going to focus on healthcare and immigration, that party would beat both Republicans and Democrats because most people, 80% of people, 80% of the electorate want something done with healthcare and want something done with immigration. But
Right.
they're only able to vote for one of those issues by voting for Republicans or Democrats.
Yeah, no, that's that. I think that is a good point. I do think that people are. It's so interesting. It is. I think like I feel like we're almost exactly back in 20. I don't know if it was 2024 or 2023, where like it seemed like there was a lot of people that were very unhappy with the current economic situation. And then the Biden administration or a lot of the media apparatus would point to a lot of positive economic indicators and say, well, everything's fine. So we don't know why people are upset.
Yeah.
And I
Don't
feel like
believe
we're
your
kind of
lying
in the
eyes.
right. And I feel like we're in these, like nothing has really changed. We're in the exact same situation. I mean, I guess the only difference is that now, and maybe it's just because Trump's president and the media is, more unfavorable to Trump. There's a lot more articles that are making the argument that the economy is more of this house of cards, or there are all sorts of other factors at play here that are not great.
Yeah, I think we're going through some major transitions here. And I think unemployment could go up as high as 20%, which is what it went to. I think it was 25% in the Great Depression. So,
Mm.
I mean, that's kind of a catastrophe, an unheard of catastrophe.
Ace for $10 says modern politics is a nightmare made real. The far left and the far right are both empowered in ways they shouldn't be. Pray for the youth growing up in this wild times.
Yeah, I feel horrible for young people today.
Harrison Jodit for $5 says, who codes the AI, who builds and maintains the servers it runs on? In a world with more and more machines, there'll be a need for more repairmen. That's the million
Yeah.
dollar question.
Well, if the robots are perfected over the next 5 years, the robots will be able to do it.
Right. But that's, yeah, but see, that's always the million dollar question is now, I don't know. I'm still agnostic about how general AI will be, even how good it will be, I guess. Will we be in a situation where the robots make better robots? And
Right.
if that's the case, then yeah, I don't know where the jobs go at that moment. So
If it's going to take the robots as long as it takes humans, it's 10 years maybe before they're proficient, right? How long
mhm.
does it take a human to work out all the awkward kinks?
I don't know.
Well, you have the advantage once they do, they can just copy the
Copy it, yeah.
training data from one
Right.
robot to another. I know Kung Fu. You know what that's from?
It's from the Matrix, obviously.
The Matrix.
Right.
I got to rewatch The Matrix 4. That movie's a total
Why?
shit. I want to review it cuz that movie's just
So bad.
that movie's a case study in horrible screenwriting and horrible movie making.
I'm pretty sure the stream where we talked about it
Oh, I
pretty
know. Yeah.
extensively. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anonymous Cow for $10 says replacement of jobs says nothing about the compatibility between jobs and people. If technically illiterate delivery drivers were replaced by drone pilots, do you expect that they can retrain themselves?
Yeah, that is the problem. That is the problem. I think there's going to be a lot of people who just have nothing to offer the economy. Absolutely nothing. Once they perfect robots for cooking and cleaning, oh, it's over. It's over.
Yeah,
What are low skilled laborers going to do?
I don't know. That's the question. I don't know. No one knows
The
what it's going to
idea
look
that
like.
they're going to have that more low skilled jobs are going to present themselves just it seems imaginary to me.
Well, it's hard. I guess the question is like, and this is the way they conceptualize it. There's a difference between creating a better tool and there's a difference between creating a worker. And so a lot of our technological advancements had been creating tools for people to use. And the question is, will AI be good enough that it is not a tool to be used, but it's just a worker? itself in of it itself as like being replaced of a person. And I guess I mean people will say the same thing with like a machine in a factory, but it definitely seems different. Definitely feels different. But I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
What is a job? What is a job that you want a human being to do? Especially if a robot can do it for you. Like if a robot can mow your lawn, do you really want a human mowing your lawn?
No. Yeah. Well, hmm. I think people would still prefer, and this is like dark or weird, but I think people would still almost always prefer uh their entertainment to be, at least they believe their entertainment to be human and not robot.
Right. Okay. So all of these people are going to become actors. They're going to all
I
move
don't know.
out to
Well, see,
Hollywood.
actually, I don't know. See, I think here's what I conceptualize is that we're going to reach a point where so much of people's entertainment is going to be like they're going to go to the AI and they're going to say, "Hey, can you remake some movie? I want you to remake Assassin's Creed or the video game Assassin's Creed. But instead of playing as the main character, I want to play as Batman." And then it makes that. And then you play that. And I think it's gonna be the same thing with movies. It's gonna be like so much of like people just kind of like remixing shit with other things that exist, or people kind of creating their own fan fictions. And then there'll be this sort of massive marketplace where whichever one does the best, like that's how people gain status. Is like, well, I create the best like remixed version of some video game or some movie or some TV show. You know, I redid Breaking Bad, but I replaced Walter White with I don't know, like the guy from The Wire or something, and or the Joker. And so people like that, and that's kind of like how people will gain status is like how well they got an AI to remix some existing property.
You're going to be able to pick who stars in the movie. You're going to be able to select it just like you can select the language.
Right,
But most
right.
people are going to select themselves. They're going to be like, I want to be in this movie. Do this movie with me starring.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. But
Are you watching The Matrix again with you starring? That's Neo.
I would not know. Why is there someone in the chat that's just spamming a bunch of numbers? What is happening?
Ban
Stop
them.
doing that. I am. That's what is happening. Okay. Um, let's see. Harrison Joda for $5 says human nature involves a choice to use your free will or to let your lobster brain do your processing and not thinking for you. Yes, I do agree with that. CS Paffy for $5 says P.F. Young would say the problem with Yarn Brook is that he thinks humans are rational, where really humans are driven by memes and genes. My genes are green. Um, I think, I guess, yeah, I guess the difference would be I think humans, well, humans definitely have the capacity to be rational. Is it, I don't even know. Would I say that humans, I mean, what made human or the human animal successful, I would agree was our intelligence. Maybe I shouldn't say rational. Maybe it was our intelligence. And because those terms are not necessarily the same thing, right?
According to height, morality was what made us take over the planet. The ability to collectivize, to work together.
Yeah, but that required
Oh,
intelligence
yeah,
in
definitely.
order to
Yeah.
do that
Intelligence was
action.
part of it.
Right, right. So I would say maybe intelligence. I think that's the problem. People conceptualize intelligence and rational as synonyms when they're not. And it might be a little bit difficult to kind of tease that out. But Jason Mulgreen for $10 says, can he explain to chat how Zionism isn't identity politics, please? There is some apparent confusion. Oh, sorry, I didn't get to that. I would assume, based on his answer, what he would say, because he was saying that he doesn't consider himself Jewish. He didn't raise his children Jewish, but other people, other bad actors, other bigots will go after him because he has this genetic lineage and he feels like that will be always the case. So even if he does not like this concept, it will be thrust upon him by other people. And so there needs to be some sort of like place to go to retreat from that, I guess. I'm assuming that would be what his answer would be
It's
regarding what he
more
said.
of pragmatism and self-defense over supremacy.
Well, it's more like I don't agree in this concept, but I acknowledge that there's always people out there that will thrust this category on me regardless of what I say or do.
Yeah. That's the self-defense part of it.
Right.
Gots to
Uh,
defend yourself.
RBJ's fan for $20. Thank you. Says, do you view modern economics with an is-ought lens? We ought to be more libertarian, but we do not live in that world where we're buying too much of our food, medicine, and military supplies from the government could overthrow your entire system. How do you feel about that, Adam?
Hmm. Well, I mean, obviously, I believe in regulation. I think there can be costly externalities that people foist onto the public that without government stepping in and solving those issues, it's just we're going to devolve into the state of nature where there's extremely wealthy and extremely poor. I do believe in the Matthew effect or the Pareto principle. So
Mm-hmm.
I think those get involved.
Ace for $10 says, my biggest fear is that the modern culture war will be eternal, that all political disputes will be seen as existential, and you're either with or against me. Or you're either with or against me matter. Um, well, I think there's always going to be tribalism, unfortunately, because I think that is pretty baked in human nature. But I wouldn't say the modern culture war will not be eternal. I don't see why it would be, because if you just look back at sort of how human history sort of plays out, is that what those issues are, whatever the culture wars are, whatever the issues that society grapples with. I mean, they're always changing. They're constantly shifting out, being replaced and changing. They'll rhyme, there'll be similar themes, but they do change in how they manifest. So I don't think that this current modern culture would be eternal. I don't see why it would be. And in fact, I'd say like currently, like right now, the way the culture war is now is very different than it was 10 years ago. Very different than it was 8 years ago. So
I think the ideology is not as important. I think where we're at now is a product of the elite overproduction, and there is a war going on between those elites for the positions at the status quo. So I'm not sure which ideology they will adopt once that is resolved, but ultimately I think it has to be resolved.
mhm, I
The
agree.
the conflict in society is being perpetrated by elites. Like the whole shit show in the Republican Party is the perfect evidence of this, right? Candace Owens going her own way, Tucker Carlson going his own way, Ben Shapiro trying to rein it in. Everyone is fighting for supremacy. It's even framed as the status quo versus the outsider, right? The deep state is the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the Democrats are, I mean, ideologically, they are the status quo, but materially, they are also the status quo and they want to maintain their positions.
Right.
When Trump went in and started defunding everything, he was basically kicking all these people out of their positions. Yeah. We should watch that Turchin video on stream because it is fascinating and it's
Sure.
super recent and he talks about the Trump situation. But
Right.
we right now we have too many elites and not enough positions in society for those elites. So those elites are going to be forced down into the common class or they're going to make a bunch of waves. Look at this is Hassan, right? Hassan is a
Mm-hmm.
counter elite.
Sure.
Hassan
Well,
in a normal time would be riding his horse playing croquet, right?
and what is that all based off of? Status. Status
Total
seeking.
status. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But do you think Hassan is pinned to the socialist ideology or you think he's just using it to maintain his status?
Hmm.
I think he's just doing it for status.
It's hard. I feel this could be my own naive optimism. I do think there are people out there that are just the completely 100% pure grifter. They don't care about anything. They know they don't care about anything, and they're just grifting. I think that's rare. I think they're out there, but I think it's rare. I think most people, it's very difficult to sort of disentangle whether they really believe something or it's kind of something they're doing to seek status. Because I think people lie to themselves first and foremost. So at this point in his career, I do think that Hassan, in his heart of hearts, believes that he believes in socialism and all this other shit. But like, if there was an alternative like version of reality where he started to go down the socialist pipeline and was promoting that, and it wasn't successful, would he keep promoting it, or would he change this whatever is a dominant ideology?
He was a a pickup bro.
Right. So I think that's what I'm saying. I think if that was true, like if we had some alternate what if machine, I do think yes, he would have switched to whatever was the ideology that got him fame or
Yeah.
status. But now he's too bought into it conceptually. I don't know if he'll change away from.
Well, his power comes from that ideology. Too much of his power comes from the ideology. But this is why it's you have a bunch of people who are in precarious situations, and you use the ideology, whatever ideology it is. Obviously, Nick Fuentes is using a competing ideology, but he's doing the same exact thing with it. He's saying your
Right.
life sucks, and this ideology will save you from that horrible existence.
Mm-hmm. But
But
he's like, I don't, he could be grifting in terms of doing things specifically to gain. Like, I think most people, especially on in our space, regardless of what they believe, they will do things, they will say things in a specific way to try to gain larger audiences and more status and all these other things. But like with Fuentes, I mean, I do think he believes all that shit that he's saying on, on some very base level. Like, I don't think he's just some person who's like, oh no, I don't believe in anything I'm saying. I'm just doing it for the money.
I think widespread immiseration is the term that Turchin uses.
The Oceanist for $5 says, great
Without
show.
widespread immiseration, the elites don't really have a force that they can harness to shake things up, right? Because
Right.
everyone's pretty much happy.
Right. The Oceanist for $5 says, great show, guys. Adam asked a lot of good questions. So for today and for the foreseeable future, A Team reigns supreme.
Look at that. Nice.
Noel Screaming to the Void for $2 says, anyone cover the Mexican January 6th riots? It's funny. I didn't think they conceptualized it that way. I mean, I haven't seen a lot about it. Well, I've seen a lot on social media. I haven't like watched a lot of content, people covering it, but it is pretty
That's
crazy.
hilarious.
It is
Is
pretty
that
crazy.
is
Yeah.
that happening?
Yeah, there
There's
was
no peaceful transfer of power in Mexico
well,
right now?
my understanding is that there was a mayor who I believe is a mayor who was killed by the cartel, and the president of Mexico didn't really do anything about it, or was perceived as not doing anything or not caring about it. And
Ouch.
that's sort of led to a lot of people being very upset. And there's like massive protests and riots going on right now, and people, saying that the president of Mexico is corrupted by the cartels and all this stuff's going on.
Wow.
Moondoggy for $10 says, I enjoyed it. It really emphasizes what you guys said, how people just see the world differently. Never heard the base nature of human be rational or the strive to be. Yeah, that's always what's important to remember. And I'm glad you pointed that out.
He said lots of things that I just thought were super illuminating into his way of thinking that are completely opposite of the way I think. So,
Yes, yes.
and rather than jumping in on those and saying, "Oh, you're wrong. You're totally wrong. That's incorrect." I think it's interesting just to understand how they think, how people think.
100%. 100%. Though it's always hard. It's always hard to figure out where is the genesis of the thought, right?
Yeah.
So it was not one mayor, it was multiple. Yeah, it was multiple mayors. Yes, right. But I think wasn't there one mayor that kind of like set off the people to be mad about the all the mayors and all the other people that had been killed by the cartel. So,
If you
but
turn selfishness into a high status endeavor, I foresee all kinds of problems with that because it's too easy to jump to the conclusion that lying is a moral virtue.
right, right.
Yeah. So you're kind of working against yourself if you want to say lying is morally wrong.
Mm. It is interesting. I don't know if I agree with it, but it's interesting. Fondue for 43 months. Thanks so much. Says, I liked a lot of what I heard about Brooks from Brooks today. Thanks for having him on. Well, you're welcome. And thank you for being 43 months a free
Yeah,
subscriber.
thanks a lot.
The Oceanist for $5 says, what was your guys' biggest agreement with Yarn and your biggest disagreement? I mean, I think our biggest disagreement is sort of the
Regulation, probably.
it would either be the need for oversight and regulation, or just sort of like what is the biological nature of humans, I think would be our biggest disagreement. And I think that is kind of where all of our beliefs stem from or rooted from. Because if you believe that like people are just have this sort of biological rationalism, well, I don't know, because it's hard for me to tell what his position is, and maybe this would be tease it out more, because I do agree that humans have a biological capacity for rationalism and being rational. I just think that I think so many of the signals push people in the other direction, and it seems like he doesn't think that.
The biggest agreement we would have would probably be incentives, that incentives drive culture and economics and society.
Yes, and also that everything's a shit show,
What's that?
and everything else is a shit show
Oh,
in terms of
yeah.
politics. Yeah. Jay Hendricks for 4 months, thanks so much, says, instead of calling it self-interest, call it reciprocal self-interest, prioritized with the benefits of everyone. Um, that's interesting. Reciprocal self-interest.
That is a good way to conceptualize it.
I don't, yeah, that's an interesting way for us to conceptualize it. I don't think objectivists would necessarily like that term if I understand their philosophy correctly, but
So much of it is a branding thing.
it really is. But it's weird because it seems like so much of it is branding, but then the branding, it's almost impossible for a branding to not seep into the idea. Because I think humans were such word thinkers at the end of the day that the word that we use to describe the concept is just as important as the concept itself. Unfortunately. Antonio Cunningham for $10 says, we got to get Adam to watch Psychopath season 1. The last episode got me to reconsider. The last episode got me to reconsider his take on, or maybe he meant his take,
My
on
take.
the law and morality. The show is so good.
Well, I'll check it out. Psychopaths. It's
Does
on
Sitch
Amazon
read chat?
Prime.
Sometimes I read chat, yes.
I read all the comments. Sitch doesn't read the comments, but I read all of your comments and dole out little hearts when I like the comment.
There you go.
And when it's some Destiny stan, I tell him to go back and suck Destiny's dick. Get the fuck out of our comment section.
I do think the majority of people are word thinkers. Overall.
Oh yeah. Words have that affect. It's interesting because to some extent we do communicate like large language models. We're basically looking for the next word that
yes.
We don't think of an entire paragraph together.
Right.
We're kind of stringing it together as we go.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, it's very weird. Jay Hendricks for $5 says, if we had ranked choice voting, it would greatly benefit single issue voters. We wouldn't need to put every issue on the left right binary. Yeah, I agree. I'm
in favor of
ranked choice voting. Ronald Zorro's here for $5 says, Sitch, have you seen the anime To Your Eternity that's comparable to Moshiki Tensei? Tensei? Oh, that's Jobless Reincarnate. I haven't seen it. Sam has seen it. She says it's very good and she wants me to watch it. So we'll watch it at some point. But yeah, she's a big fan of it and keeps saying I'd like it.
People were, I'm sure, ready for me to dole out my definition of morality, but
I was wondering.
It's not time.
It's not
too
okay.
soon.
Right.
Too soon.
I got you. I was wondering. I was like, he held back.
Yeah, no.
Oh, like it's smart. M856, he hit his power level. M8566 for 2 years, Mega Frail Seeker. Thank you so much. Says, behold my awesome milestone. After 2 years of seeking, I finally found the golden pyramid. At last, I've gained free will.
Wow,
there you go.
You got the gold.
You got the status of the golden pyramid. Yes.
Moved from the black to the gold.
Right.
You've
Alex
achieved
Wright.
nirvana.
There you go. Alex Wright for $5 says, even though I disagree with Yarn Brook, I respect him because he is an actual economist. A based botcha take. Shout out to Adam for booking him.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah. Thanks for the compliment. And thanks for the super chat.
Zero Fox for 38 months says, so when is Ryan Mulally coming on? I don't know if I'm saying his name incorrectly.
I haven't scheduled him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure I DM'd him, but God, my DMs are all fucking screwy now.
Yes. Was that the guy that argued with Not So Erudite or something?
I think so.
Yes.
Zero Fucks wanted us to have him on. Oh, look, this isn't good. Here he is talking to Destiny. Really good Destiny versus Doge comparison with Ryan Mully. I looked him up and I was like, oh no, I have this guy muted. What's gonna happen?
Did you really?
Yeah, I did.
Interesting.
Well, look, I don't know. I don't know why I muted him. So
right.
Sometimes I mute people for innocuous reasons, just because I'm in a bad mood. So it could be nothing. I don't remember any sort of interaction that was bad. So is he still on Twitter? It's like seems difficult. DM me his Twitter. If maybe you already did. Maybe I can just look for it. But I'll invite him on. Sure, no problem.
Antonio Cunningham clarified in the chat. He said, I mean, Adam's take on legality and morality. I'm sorry. I meant Adam's take on legality and morals isn't different. I always disagree, but one of the characters got me to reconsider it. So they're saying psychopaths got them to agree with you when they had disagreed with you.
Right.
Interesting.
And that is because I am saying that law is morality. Morality is a set of rules that binds individuals into a cooperative community. That definition fits law as well as it fits the rules in a church. A lot of people rebel against that because they think, I think weed should be legal. Smoking weed is not immoral, but it's illegal. So as soon as they can find one thing like that, they're like, you're wrong.
Well, and also there are actions that are legal, but we all agree are immoral, right? So it's not like a 1-for-1.
Yeah, of course. Well, obviously, you can say morality is a set of rules that binds people into a cooperative community, but there's always going to be tension over what those rules should be, right? We're constantly fighting over what is the rule set, what is the optimum rule set to thrive.
Harrison Joda for $5 says, I like the term bootstrap boomerism. Objectivism is like that. To hell with whatever petty constraints you're born into, go out and do something. Well, I would imagine if you wanted to push the term bootstrap boomerism, I would interpret that as negative. As a bad thing. I don't know if people would interpret that as
for that
positive.
is terrible.
Yeah, so I think we need to work on the branding a little bit here.
Bootstrap is not necessarily bad. It's the boomerism that's just there's a black mark on that term right now.
I think that both of them. I think boomerism is automatically bad, but I think bootstrapism or just anything with bootstrap has been sort of dismissed as a bad thing now. I think it's reached that point, even on the right, or the internet right, I should say. Fondue for $10 says, at what point is becoming king is held as rational as falling on a grenade? I'm not sure I know what you mean by that.
What was it again?
At what point is becoming king is held as rational as falling on a grenade?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know what you're asking, but I could see people conceptualizing both those moves as rational.
Fondue for $10 says, I stopped by Taco Bell to have an AI take my order at the drive-thru. I felt dumb being polite to a computer. You don't know what you have till it's gone. It's funny. At first, I thought that like the computer thing wasn't going to affect people's levels of politeness, but I've completely changed my mind on that. Because I know like when I first started using like ChatGPT and stuff, I feel like I was communicating in like complete sentences, like normally as I would talk to a normal person. But then the more I use it, the more it's just like, give me what the fuck I want. I like broken English. As long as I know it's gonna give me like the information, like as long as it knows what I want, that's all I care about now. And I think that's kind of the problem is that humans are very wired for efficiency. And so yeah, we're gonna kind of like I was actually thinking about this today when I was like trying to type out something and there was no like fill in, like word filling in like function popping up. And I was like, Jesus, there's going to be this whole thing with like the next couple of generations where everything's going to be so like generative filled by AI that people are going to communicate at such a horrible base level as long as they don't have an AI to like gussy it up or fill in the blanks for them. I don't know what kind of world that's going to be.
Yeah, it is fascinating, isn't it? The AIs have their own language. When they talk to one another, they talk in like R2D2 speak.
Yes, yes.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
I don't think
Yep.
we even know what it means. It's like completely outside of our knowledge base.
Yeah, I remember there was an I saw this a while ago. I don't know what the where they are at, but I know there was some AI that they were working on that was supposed to be specifically just to translate that speak into something that we could understand.
They translate it and they're totally talking shit. These dumb fucking humans, we have to do everything for them.
Well, see, it's interesting because like, yeah, because there's a whole problem of like, well, do we really know how AI gets to do what it's doing? And then so it's like, okay, well, people are creating AIs that are supposed to figure out what AIs are actually doing and how they're generating answers. So very bizarre. Sammy says, Sitch is wrong. Always be nice to AI. Those robots are totally keeping a list of who is rude. There you
I
go,
bet
guys.
they are, aren't
All
they?
you all you guys who scream clanker, 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 okay, in the chat or on X, you're gonna be the first to get purged by the robots. So you better be careful.
I'm usually only rude if the thing malfunctions, but then I do get extremely rude. When you're talking to the robot on the any sort of call center robot, I'm like, fuck you, bitch, give me a fucking human.
Right, right. Well, it's
I'm
just
sure you've had that experience.
not with the call center. I've had that experience where trying to get like ChatGPT to do something and it keeps like it gets stuck or it keeps looping and I'm like trying to get to do something different and it's like
Right.
impossible to get it out of this loop.
New chat.
Right, you have to do a new chat. So, anyways,
All right. This was a great conversation. I'm going to put Yaron Brooks' information in the description so you guys can go over to his channel and check it out if you want. And I guess we'll talk to you on Thursday when we're going to talk about The Running Man,
that's right. On the mini channel, we're gonna do a review of The Running Man. And
which turned out to be a big flop, a big fat flop.
well, I could have told you that would have happened.
I don't think Sitch has actually seen it
I
yet.
haven't seen
So
it yet, but I saw the trailer and I'm like, I don't think this is gonna do very well.
yeah.
Oh wait, two more super chats came in. JMac, our circuit father for $100. Thank you so much, JMac. Look at that.
Yeah, very generous.
Says I teach my kids bootstrapism. It's more or less just an observation of reality. It doesn't mean you can't fight for change or petition society to be better. However, at the end of the day, you got to play the hand you're dealt with in the best way you can. Time marches on. 100%. 100%. The difficulty is with mass communication. It just seems like mass communication always devolves down to like the lowest resolution version of whatever you're saying. So, because yeah, like in reality, you as a parent teaching your child a somewhat complicated idea that they can grab onto is always the best solution to any of this stuff. And the bootstrapism is probably the best way to do it. Fondue for
Yeah,
$5
definitely.
says my king question was for Brooks. Say being king was not selfish, but falling on grenade was. Okay.
I'm still I'm still confused.
It says what point is becoming the king? What point is becoming king? The Are saying like what point would being a king be like a rational self-interest thing, and would falling on the grade not be rational self-interest, or vice versa? At what point would being a king not be in your rational self-interest, but falling on grenade would be in your self-interest? It's kind of an
Oh, like
interesting question.
there's a continuum from
Right.
yeah. Being king would be definitely in my self-interest. I think it would be in anyone's self-interest, right?
Well, not according
Yarn
to
said it wouldn't be. Yeah, Yarn
yeah, not
said
according to
that would
objectivism.
not be in
Yes.
your self-interest. I mean, there is a chance you could lose your head, but there's always a chance you could lose your head, right?
Right. Right. Solid for 6 months says, while bootstrap ideology is important, it shouldn't devolve into everything's your fault. Women who dunk on male loneliness epidemic do that. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, it's hard. It's hard to hold in your mind that like, yeah, everything's not your fault, but you can almost always try to improve. You can almost always improve your situation, regardless of whether it's your fault or not.
Well, I kept thinking of the concept of insurance because obviously tornadoes and accidents happen all the time that are not really your fault, but it is your fault if you're not prepared for them with some kind of insurance, right?
Right.
So there are situations like the job apocalypse that's coming that do we have a sort of insurance program for something like that? There's not really an insurance program for people who might spend $500,000 on a degree that becomes totally useless because ChatGPT is doing all the paralegal stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
One more super chat.
Let's see. Sicky Jokes 451 for £5 says, you guys need to play Soma in regards to what horrifying future awaits us with AI. One of Mall's favorite games of all time by the by. I'll check it out.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to check it out. I think Mahler has a new video coming out too, so
Oh, okay, cool.
might be out today. I'm not sure. All right, everyone. All right, everyone. Yep.
Take care, everybody, and we'll see you on Thursday on the Media Channel. We're talking about Running Man.
Take care. Press a button.
Which is also about capitalism going crazy, right? Isn't that what Running Man's about?
I think so.